Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, look at this. Everybody is smiling. You love the cold weather, don't you? Oh, yeah. But anyway, I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting. And we have a quorum of members present. And I would like for the members of the board to introduce themselves, starting from my far right.
Good afternoon, Dwayne Sampson.
Hi, Freya Rigtrend.
Good afternoon, Jacqueline Pitts.
Good afternoon, Felipe Franco.
Good afternoon, Jackie Sherman.
I'm Joe Ramos. And on my left,
Good afternoon, Melissa Cinton Hernandez, Deputy General Counsel.
and I would not be here without any information if it wouldn't have been from the young lady that's sitting down below. Denise, can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, Denise Upshaw, the Director of Communications and Policy.
Thank you. And now I would like to have the New York City Department of Correction.
Acting Chair Ramos.
Commissioner.
This is Bobby
Oh,
Cohen.
I'm sorry. Where's Robert? Oh, there you go. You're in
Yeah.
the front here.
Right. Okay, good luck with the meeting.
Thank
Bobby
you.
Cohen.
Thank you. This is Dr. Cohen. I'm sorry, Doctor. I wasn't looking down there.
That's
I didn't
fine.
see it. And I'd like the Commissioner of the Department of Correction to please introduce his staff.
Good morning, board members, Acting Chair Ramos. My name is Luis Molina, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Corrections. With me, I have the First Deputy Commissioner, Linnell McGinley-Liddy, our Chief of Staff, Pat Thompson, our General Counsel, Paul Scheckman, Ali Robertson, our Executive Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, our Senior Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Joe Dempsey's with us. Our Deputy Commissioner of the Investigations Division is also with us, as well as other members of the DOC staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, Ms. Amanda Masters, who, as you know, is our Executive Director, she would not be able to be here with us today because she's ill. And we wish her a speedy recovery. And I know that she'll be here as soon. Matter of fact, I got a feeling that she's in her house watching the meeting and seeing how I conduct this meeting. But Amanda, get well. And don't forget about that little Puerto Rican remedy that I suggest that you take, that tea with ginger and a little honey there. Now, and one of the things that I'd like to do is also let you know that our acting chairperson, Mr. Medina, has resigned, and we will truly miss him. We will miss his expertise and background within the corrections community, and we'll truly miss his knowledge and background as well, as I mentioned, and we wish him well. Now, to begin our meeting, we would like to, as I mentioned before, we have a full quorum, and I would like to make the motion to start the meeting. Those in favor? Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Ms. Melissa Cintron.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Cinton Hernandez. I'm the Deputy General Counsel. Our first order of business is a vote on the draft minutes for the October 18th, 2022 board meeting, which board members have received. I will now turn it over to Acting Chair Ramos for a vote.
Will the board members move to vote and approve the October 18th meeting minutes? Second?
Second.
Okay, board meetings minutes have been accepted. Now, do any members have any edits or comments on the minutes? I now call for a vote again to approve the October 18th, 2022 minutes. I see the shaking heads. That means it's approved. Now, I've already, I'd like to turn over the meeting over to Ms. Melissa again.
As a first matter of business, it is now a little bit after 1 p.m. We have the room for a limited amount of time, so I ask everyone to be mindful of the time as we have a full agenda to get through, plus 2 public comment periods. On today's agenda, we first have a public comment section on DOC's limited variance request relating to minimum standards 109 C1I and the visiting schedule on Thanksgiving Day, followed by the department's presentation or the opportunity for them to speak on the variance and the vote on the variance. After that, the Department of Correction Commissioner will present updates on the Nunez Action Plan, descriptions of plans to reduce violence, including in GRVC, staff absenteeism and staff discipline, and details regarding active programming available in the jails. CHS and the department will then present updates on EMTC intake processing. The board will also speak on the latest report issued on deaths in custody and give board members the opportunity to ask CHS and DOC questions on that matter. Finally, we will have a second public comment period where we will hear comments from people in custody and the general public. We have had 2 new deaths in custody since our last meeting. The new deaths are Eric Davida, 28, who died on October 22nd in AMKC Mental Observation Housing. His death is a suspected suicide. And Gilberto Garcia, 26, who died on October 31st in GRVC General Population Housing. His death is suspected to be drug-related. We express condolences to their families and loved ones. BOC staff is actively investigating these latest deaths and will convene CHS and DOC to discuss them and will also issue a report. It is our duty to investigate in-custody deaths as these people are in the care, custody, and control of the department. Next, the board expresses condolences for several deaths of department staff since our last meeting. They are retired Captain Gail Threadgill, retired Officer Marisa Severson, retired Captain John Hannon, Program Specialist Marie Paul, retired Officer Elvin Alvarado. Next, some basic census data. As of November 1st, 2022, there are 5,942 people in custody across all facilities. 2,058 are in AMKC, 0 in Bedford, 46 in Bellevue Hospital Prison Ward, 849 in EMTC, 771 in GRVC, 269 in NIC, 0 in OBCC, 334 in Rosie's, 836 in RNDC, 697 in VCBC, 82 in West Facility. Finally, there are 2 reports forthcoming from the board. Firstly, the 3rd report and recommendations on deaths in custody in 2022. And we will also publish a 2nd serious injury report soon. We now turn to DOC's limited variance request relating to minimum standard 109 C1I. The department is requesting that visits for Thanksgiving Day on November 24th, 2022 be conducted on a day schedule rather than an evening schedule. This request constitutes a variance from the minimum standard, which requires that the department provide at least 2 evenings for visits on Monday through Friday each week. The board will hear the variances regarding correspondence and packages at the next meeting. So we now turn to the public comment period for responses to the department's Thanksgiving visiting variance requests. Due to time constraints, given the room schedule, we ask that commenters specifically speak about the Thanksgiving Day visiting variance. We will take online speakers as well as in person. We have a list of speakers who signed up to speak in person, just one person. Acting Chair Ramos is going to call that person's name.
I will now call the first speaker, and it's Chaplain Dr. Victoria. Speak into the microphone, please.
Is it on? Oh, there it is. Oh, there, yes. Peace and blessings, everyone. It's good to see you all. It's a full room today. Good to see the commissioner finally showed up as well. I'm Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips. Everyone knows me as Dr. V. And I'm just going to keep it short, but I wanted to get on the record and say, you know, it's very disheartening. I don't even celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm an indigenous person. I think it's barbaric on domestic soil, but that's not here. I'm not here to say that. For those who do celebrate Thanksgiving, it's disheartening to have any part of a visit stripped from them. You know, we go into this work and servicing and giving to others. Even in nursing, you work uncomfortable shifts, uncomfortable days, holidays and things away from your family. When you become an officer, you know holidays are a part of that. And you know, in September, in front of this board, the FDC that the commissioner made, the new FDC told y'all that 27 units were unmanned. And so what does it look like on a daily basis for people to actually have access to visits or actually have access to their loved ones and to rekindle relationships to prepare them for their reentry? And so on a holiday when many people who would want to support their loved ones incarcerated do happen to have that day off, they should be afforded the right to see their loved ones. Peace and blessings. Remember that when you think about your vote.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. We will now hear from people who signed up to speak online. Do we have any speakers? Oh, we have no speakers online for this variance topic. So we now turn to the discussion and vote on the variance and pass it over to Acting Chair Ramos.
We will now hear from the department, who will be given a chance to speak on the variance requested.
Morning, members of the board. My name is Allie Robertson. I'm the Executive Director of Intergov Affairs for DOC. Thank you for hearing our variance request this morning or this afternoon. As you all know, this variance request simply allows us to offer in-person visits on Thanksgiving Day in the morning as opposed to in the evening to afford both staff and visitors the opportunity, if they so choose, to celebrate Thanksgiving in the evening.
Do any board members have any questions for the department? Dr. Robert Cohen? We can't hear you.
In light of Dr. V's comment, is it possible for the department to provide afternoon and evening visiting for those for whom day visiting would not be possible?
Thank you, Dr. Cohen, for your question. We have on Friday, so Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we sort of offer the realm, the visit hours of like from the morning through the evening to accommodate folks with differing work schedules. And so while Wednesday will be evening, Thursday we're requesting to move to the morning, and Friday again will be a morning visit. And so within that span of Wednesday to Friday, we hope to accommodate as many people on the hours that work for them.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I will now move to vote on the request for the limited variance to allow the department to conduct visits on a daily schedule rather than the evening schedule on November 24th. I'd like to set a vote on the variance.
Yeah, Chair Ramos, I'd like to make a motion to accept the variance offered by DOC.
Do I hear a second?
Can I get further details about the time? What time are we talking about? Doctor? Wednesday's gonna be morning and Friday's gonna be evening. Can you?
Sure, sure. So on our website, the public have available to them the hours of visits, and also folks are encouraged to sign up so they know what time to come. It's been adjusted already for Thursday, so the times of visits should be up and readily available for folks to see. Visits should-
Can you tell me the time?
Yeah, it's approximately around 8 in the morning they should begin, and they go through the early afternoon, maybe like 12:30, ending at 2 p.m. Last visit starting at 12:30, ending approximately 2 p.m.
And that would be Wednesday. That's the morning day, right?
So we're asking for this to happen on Thursday.
Thursday, okay.
Yes, on Thanksgiving Day.
And Friday's gonna be evening. What times?
So Friday is typically the early schedule. So Friday will match Thursday. So Friday is again from approximately 8 to 2. Wednesday is the one that will happen in the later portion of the afternoon.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, so now I make a motion to vote on the variance. Do we have any other existing conditions? And now we'll have the Deputy General Counsel Hernandez read the conditions.
The condition reads as follows. By November 23rd, 2022, the department will notify people in custody and visitors of the change via inmate council meetings and posters in housing areas, visit areas, libraries, and intake.
Will the board members move to vote on the existing conditions? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Basically, that's it. Does DOC or CHS wish to comment on the proposed conditions? Okay. There are no conditions? All right, we'll call for a roll call again. And I asked each member to state out loud if they're in favor or opposed to the conditions. Starting with the far right. Board
Yes,
Member Sampson,
yes,
Board Member,
Yes.
oh,
Rick-Trink?
Board Member Pitts,
Yes.
Board Member Franco,
Yes.
Board Member Sherman,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting that Dr. Cohen. is
That's
still-
okay. I'm forgettable.
Dr.
Please, I vote yes.
Well, the motion passes. Now, any other proposed conditions? That's it, right? Okay, so please excuse me because I have to read and I didn't know all these conditions that you needed to know in order to be able to pass a variance. But bear with me. Thank you. Will the board member move to vote on the requested variance with conditions that have been approved? And second? Okay. Does any board member? Oh, we already said that. All right, here we go. By roll call vote, we will ask each board member to state out loud if they are in favor or opposed to the request variance with conditions that have been approved. Board Member Cohen,
Yes.
Board Member Pitts,
Yes.
Board Member Reddick. Uh-oh.
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Sampson,
Yes.
Board Member Sherman,
Yes.
Board Member Franco,
Yes.
and I vote yes. You cannot vote. Okay. The variance is approved. All right, before we go to the next step and we go to the Department of Correction, I would like to, first of all, you know that we always pay a lot of attention to a lot of the unfortunate deaths that occur in the department, whether they're overdoses or suicides. But we never give an opportunity for the department to state how many lives they save. And I would like to highlight some clippings that I finally saw in the Daily News where correction officers at the Manhattan House of Detention saved the life of a person who was ODing, even though they got criticized because they did not use Narcan, but they revived the individual, and the individual is well. The other thing is that we also had another incident at at another institution last month, also of an overdose, and it happened very, very late at night, and the individual, they used Narcan on the individual who was overdosing, and he is now doing well as well. But we need to recognize the fact that although we do have unfortunate instances in the Department of Correction, but correction officers also save lives. And I think it's important for the Department of Correction to highlight those situations as well. Not only that, but then after that, we also have that there was an inmate that left the Department of Correction, and he is now an attorney. And just recently, he donated thousands of books for the department, for the libraries. And that got some nice publicity. But we do have people who continue to get, uh, uh, contact with the department and give of themselves to make the situation better in the Department of Correction. And lastly, but not least, on Veterans Day, I happened to turn on the television and I see this big sign, New York City Department of Correction. And I have to let the commissioner know that immediately I looked not at the color guard, but at the group of recruits that are coming into the department. They were sharp. The only ones sharp in the parade were the United States Marines. But I'd like to congratulate you and the exhibition that was presented by the Department of Correction. Now, you have to excuse me because I talk a lot. But anyway, and now, how we go to, right? Okay. Now I would like to move on the next agenda item. We have asked the commissioner to present updates on the Nunez Action Plan. This is an opportunity for the commissioner to explain his progress, speak on the number 17th hearing, and expand on its plans for the immediate and long-term future of the department. Commissioner, you may proceed.
Thank you, Acting Chair Ramos, and thank you for your kind remarks about the hard work that our uniform and non-uniform staff do every day, as well as our partners in correctional health services who provide medical services to the very vulnerable population in our custody. We do not do this work alone. And I would also say for those that are formerly incarcerated that volunteer or work with our nonprofit contract providers, they all are also critical partners in this work. To provide the board a bit of an update regarding the Nunez Court Conference, on November 17th, the department appeared before Judge Swain for a status conference. The city submitted a request for Judge Swain to suspend certain provisions of the state and local law to allow the department's commissioner flexibility to consider outside candidates for the position of warden to lead our facilities. The judges has not made a decision on this request yet, but that decision will be made at a later date. Based on the most recent monitor report and the arguments presented to Judge Swain, the judge also denied legal aid requests for the ability to make a motion to seek receivership of the department. The Southern District of New York also did not support legal aid requests, but they did reserve the right to file a motion for that request in the future. We have a hearing date scheduled with Judge Swain again, another status conference on April 27th of 2023. This will allow us approximately about a year and a half of this administration's control over the city's jail system. And my confidence is at that time, we'll be able to continue with our momentum to deal with the progress of the jails so that we can create a humane and just jail system in this city. We will also be conferring with legal aid regarding our 24-hour new admission clock by December 2nd and updating Judge Swain on our plans to address that issue the week of December 5th. So the goal of our action plan was really to address 4 foundational issues that will ultimately create a safer and more stable environment within our jails, not only for the staff that work there, but also for the people that are placed in our custodial care. I'll sort of stop there in case the board members have any specific questions regarding the status conference or the action plan in general.
Commissioner, on the new admission procedures, how have you done any assessments on the effectiveness of it to maintain the 24-hour?
Yeah, so thank you for your question, Board Member Sampson. So what I will tell you is the intake process has been a challenge going back as far as last year. We did close down at one point. We had intake processes at OBCC, which at this point is temporarily closed, and central intake moved to EMTC. There's a number of things that we're doing there at EMTC to address the issues that have been sort of ongoing for a while now. If you give me a moment just to look at my notes here.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just not finishing answering. I just want to. So this was going to come up later, sort of in the agenda, but I'll talk about the EMTC intake and what we've done. So as you know, we've built out an Office of Management Analysis and Planning team. This business unit did not exist prior to this administration taking over the department. And what that team is working on is really creating an enhanced dashboard that will track really critical points in time in the intake process to allow the department more efficiently to accurately track an individual's time spent in intake. Additionally, this system will be also more user-friendly for the staff that have to use it. We are working with our Deputy Commissioner of Administration, who is also the designated staffing manager under the action plan by the Federal Monitor, looking at workforce optimization and making sure that we have specific minimum staffing in order to deal with intake, as well as training the staff there. There's going to be ongoing training to make sure that consistently the same staff are working in intake so that there's a much more smoother transition. And we're also embedding within our IT system with this new enhanced dashboard, the ability to be able to track changes that are made regarding how the person is going through the process and system. What's beneficial about the enhancement of this dashboard is when we identify deficiencies or delays in time with a particular person in custody and why that delay is occurring, we can then figure out what do we need to do on the security side to address that issue so that someone else isn't affected. If it happens to affect correctional health services, then we can collaborate with correctional health services on what we can do together to speed up that process for the people that are going through the intake process.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Commissioner, could I just follow up a little bit on that to understand? I'm happy to hear you mention CHS. Are CHS and the department partnering on the implementation of the dashboard? Will that be a dashboard that's accessible to all who are working on the intake process?
That would be my intention. And so first is our IT department and our OMAP analysis team, which is made up of industrial engineers. Once we sort of settle on what we think needs to be on there to be captured, for example, how long is a person waiting for a particular part of that process? Maybe that's medical. If that process is taking longer than we expect, or if we see an outlier where somebody waited X number amount of hours when the average wait time is this, we will be sharing that information with CHS. And we will give them access to the dashboard as well to look at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a
Yes.
question. I'm sorry, Felipe, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, Commissioner, as you are developing this new dashboard, is there a set of standards and practices that you have in mind? Like when you're talking about the timing, are we going to abide by the set of standards for intake as the ones developed by the American Correction Association? Or are you developing a new set of standards in terms of timing or each one of those activities?
Sure. So the National Institute of Corrections, the ACA, the American Correctional Association, the National Commission on Correctional Healthcare have standards. So one is abiding by the 24-hour standard that has been established, right? And I don't know if there's ever really been sort of a robust debate on is 24 hours the right time. We think that it is.
It depends. I mean,
Right.
in juvenile justice, it's actually an hour.
Yeah, right.
Good.
So, I mean, it really depends on how the people come to us, right?
Okay.
The volume of people that may come that day. So we're looking at NIC standards. Our deputy commissioners that not only see administration, but facility operations are working in partnership on this under the guise of the Senior Deputy Commissioner of Operations. And of course, we will work in consultation with CHS to make sure that whatever their appropriate staffing matrix is fits that time frame of expectations, and always are seeking to improve from there. And if we have an outlier where somebody waits longer than expected, then is it an outlier or is there some kink in the system?
Okay. It would be great if you can share once you determine the standards of practice. Thank you.
Absolutely. Dr. Cohen, I think you had a question.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
You know, following up on Jackie Sherman's question, there really aren't that many components to the process. I mean, it's a very complicated process, but if you have part of the process and CHS has part of the process, I don't believe anybody else has it. And I hope it would not be possible to resolve the issues that gave rise to this discussion without a clear working with CHS and developing a program with CHS. That's my opinion, having been responsible for this process in the past. I do have a question. One of the reasons this came up, other than the tremendous backlogs at long times of stay in EMTC several months ago, there was a manipulation of the data by your staff to change the data so that it looked like it was happening within 24 hours when it wasn't. This was discussed at a previous meeting, and you said that that discipline was recommended by your own investigation. Could you tell us what discipline you gave these the people involved?
Well, I don't have the transcript in front of me, so I don't know if that's exactly what I said. I think, if I recall, what I said was that the issue is under investigation. It is under investigation by the investigation division, as well as, I believe, DOI as well is investigating this issue. At the conclusion of that investigation, if disciplinary, if allegations are substantiated, then there will be a due process disciplinary process for that.
Okay, well, thank you. I believe that the minutes of our minutes reflected the fact that you had investigated it and that the investigation had recommended discipline. But I'm finished now.
Hi, good afternoon,
Good
Commissioner.
afternoon.
I just had a couple of follow-up
Sure.
questions. One on the standards, I think we would just also interested in knowing if there is like a certain hour amount that's less than 24 that you end up shooting for as kind of the intended standard, with 24 being, I assume, the ceiling, right, that you wouldn't want to exceed. but looking for something else that you would aim to get everyone through in a shorter amount of time. And then my other question was, in working through the dashboard, which sounds like a great step in terms of identifying problems with process flows, what would be the escalation protocol that would come into effect when you do see someone that's taking too long at a certain stage or on track to exceed the 24 hours? Both with DOC and I assume CHS as well would need their own protocol.
No, thank you for your question. And you're right. I mean, 24 hours would be the ceiling. We would not aspire to have people there for 24 hours. Depending on the volume of people, we'd want people to get through that intake process as quickly as possible so that they can settle into whatever housing unit they're going to be assigned to through their after intake process. As to your question about the escalation process, the Deputy Commissioner of Administration, working in concert with the acting warden of EMTC, is also ensuring that steady supervision, the same supervision is there, so that officers have support to go to first line supervisors to escalate their issues. The acting warden at EMTC has a relationship with CHS, and frequently, even today, will identify issues or pain points that may be happening in a particular shift or maybe a pattern that she may be seeing. So she has that relationship with CHS to escalate those issues.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Now, next topic, Commissioner. Description of plans to reduce violence, including GRVC.
Got it. Thank you. So moving on to the reduction of violence, first, I just want to talk about the tremendous work that we've done really at RNDC. In March of this year, as you know, we implemented a violence reduction plan at RNDC to address heightened levels of violence at that facility, which predominantly house our young adult males. And if this board can recall, that time in March, RNDC was our most violent facility on the island. The plan included a strategy to blend gang affiliations within the housing units, as opposed to concentrating them within a particular units, improve staff supervision, enhance programming for our young adults in custody, and increase search operations to remove dangerous contraband from the facility. Since implementation, slashing and stabbings have decreased year to date at RNDC. If we look at our calendar year to date total, slashing and stabbings are down there 19%. If we look at our fiscal year to date total, they're down 60%. 7 out of the last 11 months have had decreases in slashing and stabbings at RNDC. When we saw an anticipated uptick in violence in March as the plan went into effect, the months since that violence reduction plan has been put in place, monthly slashing and stabbings have remained far below than where they were in March. Now, what we did was we wanted to replicate what we did at RNDC at GRVC, which has grown in violence over the last few months, as this board knows. We are working on implementing a violence reduction plan at GRVC, a facility that also houses a challenging population. GRVC exclusively houses high classification individuals and is where the department's restrictive housing is also located. We anticipated similar spikes in violence as individuals in custody adjust to these new practices of breaking up of gang housing, as well as to search operations to remove weapons and other narcotics contrabands. In order to curb the significant amount of violence at GRVC, we've also increased tactical search operations at GRVC. I'm happy to say that as of this month right now, calendar month to date, we're experiencing a 25% decrease in slashings and stabbings department-wide, and specifically at GRVC, when we look at month to date in November compared to where we were October to date, we have a 53% decline in slashing and stabbings. So in October, we did experience a spike of 9 slashings and stabbings during the Columbus Day holiday weekend, which contributed to a spike of slashing and stabbings department-wide. We have also, from a programming perspective, I know you have seen at RNDC, we have the Peace Center, which is our program, education, and community engagement center for those that are housed at RNDC. We've just recently, a couple of weeks ago, opened what we call the Beacon Programming Center. So it was a housing unit that replicates sort of the Peace Center amenities. that we're using to incentivize housing units to go there to take a lot of similar-like programming amenities that are offered at RNDC. So it's our hope that RNDC will start to sort of see decreases in violence as well as in uses of force. The monitor made reference to this at the status conference hearing. So we just need time for these strategies to take hold, but they are best correctional practices. They're going to help us sustain having a sort of a very calm environment within GRVC as these processes take hold. You have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from the board? Thank you, Commissioner. Oh,
I have questions.
Yeah, I just want a clarification. So the Beacon program that you mentioned, that has been implemented at GRVC?
Yeah, we just opened it a couple of weeks ago. We had to do significant construction within that housing unit. It was a housing unit that was with cells. Now we have programmatic spaces in there, things from bike repair to yoga. We do a lot of other programmatic activities there. We've also carved out an audio studio as well there. So it replicates a lot of what you may have seen in the Peace Center in RNDC at GRVC. DC Torres and her team, as well as Acting Warden Court and her team, spearheaded this, as well as DC Lyons, who works off facilities and maintenance. A lot of work went into doing this. I will give credit where credit's due. The work predates me, but we finally got it opened. We had an inaugural opening. Persons in custody had an opportunity to use it during our ribbon cutting ceremony, and they were excited about it.
How many persons in custody have access to it?
Well, it'll be by the housing unit. So similar like we have the Peace Center and RNDC. So if a housing unit of, let's say 20 individuals, we will bring that housing unit to the Beacon Center. The other thing we're also looking at is, are there time and places where maybe individuals from maybe 2 or 3 housing units at the same time that prefer to go to the center, but maybe don't, and others that want to stay in the housing unit. We don't want to force anyone to use the amenities. So we're working that out as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sounds fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. You were very accommodating to invite me to go to the tour with banks when we were talking, and I know that's a priority for your education. Is the Beacon Programming Center an instrument to provide certificates or any other kind of education to folks?
That's a good question. So similar and alike to the Peace Center, we are doing what I would call career technical type educational opportunities, working with contract program providers, as well as other maybe nonprofits or other faith-based leaders that want to come in and do volunteer work. The individuals that are housed at GRVC are adults, facing some very, very serious charges. But my hope is that we convince these individuals to really embrace programming while they're going through incarceration. So in the event that if someone does have to do more time in our state facilities, that they have a mindset of embracing programming to make as maximum use of their time as possible, so that when they re-enter our communities, they have a higher probability of success. Welcome. Yes, Dr. Cohen.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes, thank you again, Commissioner. One of the main mechanisms that you have used, as I have read about it, and as the board has collected data, is emergency lock-ins in RNDC and GRVC. Overall, the department is 50% higher than emergency lock-ins than it was in January, and certainly in RNDC and GRVC, there have been significant increases. How has that lock-in, and I guess you're requiring an emergency order by the mayor in order to do that lock-in right now. How has that affected access to the programs that you're talking about, as well as law library, access to medical care, mental health care, and recreation?
So we don't require an emergency order for the lock-ins. What we have been doing is using lock-ins as needed to deal with issues of violence that we anticipate may be occurring. If a use of force occurs and we have to deal with that issue, or we have to do tactical security operations. I think it's important to point out that GRVC does house the most violent adults that we have on the island. 30% of the population there is accused of either murder, attempted murder, or manslaughter, and we have about a 30% gang affiliation. So as we deal with blending gang housing units, sometimes issues of disagreement flare up, and we want to make sure that people are safe. And lock-ins provide us an opportunity to do that. While lock-ins are up, they're also cut because of an increase in the use of tactical search operations, which did not happen very rarely in all of 2021. I believe there was only one tactical search operation in 2021, and we've conducted over 40 of those operations department-wide, calendar year to date this year. So while lock-ins in and of themselves are up, what I will tell you is that the duration of those lock-ins has slightly been about an average of 6 hours. The number of housing units affected by lock-ins has come down about 14%, and the number of individuals in custody affected by lock-ins has also decreased about 20% calendar year to date this year versus last year. So while they're up, naturally, because we've had to remove weapons department-wide through the many facilities that where just basic correctional security practices were not being done, I'll remind the board that we have recovered and removed over 4,700 contraband weapons from our facilities department-wide, as well as over 1,000 narcotics contraband. Specifically to GRVC, they've had about 29 of these searches, and we recovered from GRVC alone 525 contraband weapons calendar year to date. And at RNDC, we've also recovered about 271 weapons calendar year to date.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
If I may, I have a comment and then a question. Additional violence statistics created by the board will be available on the violence data deck uploaded to our website after the meeting. And that data reflects that from June to October 2022, GRVC had a total of 97 slashing and stabbing incidents, more than 4 times the rate of the next highest facility, which is RNDC. So how would the department address this increase?
Well, I think that answers part of the questions of why lock-ins are so high. GRVC was, violence was increasing there. We are breaking up gang housing, which is a dangerous situation not only for our staff, but also for other persons in custody when one of them has a difference of opinion with the other members that they're gang affiliated with. So we're addressing this through lock-ins when needed. We're also addressing it with programming, right? So the Beacon Program Center could be a huge game changer for our population because it allows incentivized behavior and for individuals to take part in that if they're able to sort of coexist together in their housing units.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you talk a little bit more about lockdowns is one of the vehicles you're using to reduce violence. You talk about the Beacon project, which sounds fantastic. My experience talking to young people at RNDC when you were doing the same, trying to bring different affiliations together, was that many of the young people felt that they didn't have any guidance on how to cohabitate together. And I would love to hear from you, how are you managing the merging of young people or adults with different affiliations? Are you bringing, credible messengers? Is there like a process of leadership coming together with you and others to minimize conflict? Just want to hear what else. I mean, programming is very good in terms of a motivator, but what I felt at RNDC was that even young people who wanted to figure out a way of moving beyond their affiliations needed guidance to do that. And I want to hear who's helping them.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, you can't put a group of individuals together and not have some semblance of a shepherd, so to speak, so that they can learn to sort of coexist with each other. So there's a number of actors that participate in that process. The first one is, I will say, are our correction officers that work on the floors. It is not uncommon for our correctional officers, especially those working with our young adult populations, to sort of have these community circles where they talk about why you're having a bad day. Today you had a good day. Why didn't you wake up and go to school? I myself tour RNDC frequently, and on occasion when I see a young adult not in school, I'll ask, why didn't you go to school today? So our staff, both uniform and non-uniform, have a vested interest in going to these housing units to making sure that we're bridging the issues of people's conflict. In addition to that, we've opened up our facilities more to faith-based leaders. We recently at RNDC had our Fatherless No More program, which was led by Pastor Tim Johnson out of Orlando. He called us cold and said he wanted to participate and really help with young adults, especially those that were experiencing fatherless, whether they may have had a biological father living in their household, but that engagement wasn't really positive in any way, really just allowing this young person to live in sort of a crucible of violence, or those that didn't have any young adult father figures in their lives. So he shared his journey with these young men through scripture. And we really got a group of about 17 young adults that were all heavily gang affiliated to really coexist through a month's program process where they could see themselves, humanity in each other. In addition to that, we had what I would call violence interrupters, credible messengers coming into the facility to talk to these young men. In many cases, these credible messengers, maybe 10 or 12 years, this individual senior, but has shared with them the sacrifice of their adolescent life to the criminal justice system and how much they have lost in going in and having a child that when you get out, that child is 20 years old, right? So I think it's a lot of different things with our young adult population, what we did at RNDC in order to be able to sort of coexist together. Now, they have different sort of things that they're going to respond to, right? They still have brain development. They're still, despite the serious crimes that they're accused of, children at heart. And I think our uniform staff, our non-uniform staff understand that. Our staff come from the same zip codes that people in custody are coming from. So they too understand what familial incarceration is like. We are doing the same type of strategy in GRVC. It's a little bit different because we're dealing with 30-year-old men there that have lived a really, really long life of just being criminogenic involved in a lot of different things, also facing some very, very heavy time. But listen, we take people as they are. Our staff don't judge individuals for what they're accused of. We have been very clear that our culture within DOC is really a culture of rehabilitation, and we play no role in punishment. The punishment is the loss of freedom that the court has imposed on them while they go through this criminal justice process.
Thank you. And it all sounds exactly, what is needed. Again, I want to reiterate that in my experience talking to young adults or RNDC, they felt they needed more of that guidance. So I assume that maybe GRBC could be the same. New York City right now is the city that invests the most in violence interrupters than anywhere else. So please take advantage of those resources.
No, absolutely. I've met with a number of nonprofits, community leaders that are interested in being violence interrupters and credible messengers, and whatever we can do to expand people's access to those types of individuals that have had shared lived experiences, we would not be a barrier to that.
Hi. I wanted to follow up on what Dr. Cohen had started to raise, I think related to the emergency orders and just the current status of lockout time at GRVC. You talked about the use of lockdowns and that being as needed, but for the general population in GRVC right now, could you just clarify how many hours of lockout they're getting and how, if it's less than the 14, how long you expect that to continue for and what you would need to see to change that?
Apologies, Commissioner. I just like to ask the audience to refrain from commentary aloud while the agencies are presenting. There will be a public comment section at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
So thank you for your question. So the general population housing units at GRVC, as well as our other general population housing units, based on the minimum standards as well as the SCOC rules, allows these individuals to be out of cell for 14 hours a day. And as of right now, individuals are out 14 hours a day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes, Commissioner, I completely agree with your plan to mix up the housing areas, to not have one particular SRG be dominant. And I understand how difficult this is and how likely it is to create a violent situation. Could you let us know the success rate of this effort? I know in the past, the department has attempted, particularly in GRVC, to do this. GRVC is always GRVC. What is your success rate in RNDC and GRVC in terms of changing the concentration of SRGs?
Yeah, so let me start with RNDC first, right? Because that's where we sort of piloted this strategy, which I think is a sound correctional practices of making sure that individuals that are from different gang-affiliated groups are
Excuse me,
blended
Commissioner,
together.
can I interrupt you? I've asked you once before, please let the presenter continue speaking without you interrupting them. But you're speaking so loud that I can hear you. So do me a favor, please. Let the presenter continue without you interrupting. Yes, dear. Okay. All right, Commissioner.
All right. So
Excuse
thank you, Dr. Cohen. I think if you give me a few minutes, I think the best way to sort of show success is looking at some data specifically related to slashings and stabbings. So in March, when RNDC was at the height of being the most violent facility on the island, I will tell you that in March, we had a 200% increase in slashings and stabbings in March of this year compared to March of last year. We started this sort of in late February going into March, our violence reduction plan. We started to see finally some effect of this plan of blending tactical search operations, programmatic interventions, violence interrupters. And in April, we saw a 24% decrease at RNDC. Going into May, it really started to take hold, and we saw that the young men that are in our care started to really sort of adapt to this new environment. And in May of this year, we saw a 64% decrease in slashings and stabbings at RNDC alone. This impact and decrease was so profound that department-wide, we saw a decrease of slashings and stabbings in May of a decrease of 44%. We continued with our strategy in June at RNDC. In June of this year, RNDC saw a 77% decrease in slashings and stabbings. Department-wide, that decrease was about 3%. That was the impact that it had. In August, we still remained single digits in slashings and stabbings at RNDC, but we did see a spike in August, a 50% spike. But I will say that in July of 21, we had 6 slashings and stabbings at RNDC. And in 22, we had 9, just to kind of give you some perspective. This uptick also was felt department-wide in July. There was a lot of just what I would call SRG conflict that was cascading through the department. And we saw department-wide an increase of 53%. Going into August, we restabilized again. RNDC itself saw a 69% decrease in slashings and stabbings. And in August, we started to see a decrease department-wide of 3%. Going into September, RNDC experienced an 83% decline. And then we started to experience in September department-wide a decrease of 40%. In October, like I shared with you, we had that 9 slashing spike at GRVC. If that spike had not occurred, we would have saw about a 5% decrease of slashing and stabbings department-wide versus an 18% increase. But that being said, in October of this year, slashing and stabbings at RNDC were down 45%. Month to date at RNDC, we see that slashing and stabbings are down 79%. So calendar year to date, we're experiencing a 19% decrease at RNDC as it relates to slashing and stabbings, and an overall 8% decrease in use of force as well. So we also saw at RNDC matching decreases in use of force as well. Month to date, department-wide, we do have a decrease of 25% of slashings and stabbings. And if you give me a moment here. We still have an uptick at GRVC because it's going through a transitionary period, but we're confident that if we stay the course, we will be trending in the decreasing direction at GRVC. So GRVC now, once we begin to take a hold of the issues that are happening at GRVC, once we get buy-in from the population of the adult men that are there to sort of work with us, to work with them on their issues, we will start to see these continued trends decrease at GRVC, which will have a rippling effect of slashing and stabbings, we believe, department-wide throughout the department. In addition to seeing continued decreases in use of force, which calendar year to date is down department-wide 18%. That being said, we still have a great deal of work to do. I mean, these incidences of slashing and stabbings, while in some instances are down, while we do have a decrease in use of force incidences down 8%, these incidences are far too high. So I appreciate the decreasing trend, but we need to be more in line with what we see in other jurisdictions regarding use of force, as well as slashing and stabbing violence, and we're working towards that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a comment, and I mean, the data that the board is providing to us, and that actually that you provided to the court, shows that the use of force, the GRVC slashing and stabbings this year is about twice what it was last year, and the use of force rate is also significantly elevated. My question to you was, what success can you demonstrate in terms of the integration of the SRGs? How are the dorms different, or the housing areas different than when you began this process, which you explained, and I understand creates violence, and maybe still is creating violence?
Well, they're different in that we work very hard to make sure that there isn't any one particular SRG group that has the majority of control over a housing unit. And we keep them sort of balanced so that they can be sort of unbalanced as a community so that they can learn to work together. In addition to that, we have officers that are more supported on the floor for those incidents, for those areas where we have a high concentration of very violent individuals that we're trying to blend and manage. We have multiple officers on the floor, and we're ensuring that area supervisors are making frequent visits to these areas so that they can address issues as they come up. Acting Warden Court, who's also at GRVC, engages with the detainee councils, also known as inmate councils, to engage with them on things that are happening. The other thing that I'll mention is that at the end of the month, where GRVC is going to be the first facility where we deploy tablets. And we think with the deployment of those tablets, that's going to be another sort of intervention on top of everything else that we're doing, that it will provide opportunities for the detainees to be busy themselves. My hope is that there'll be greater access for them to communicate with their families and engage in other programmatic activities so that they're not in situations where they're in conflict with each other. But I believe that violence is a learned behavior. So with our violence interrupters, our program staff, our uniform staff and non-uniform staff that engage with the individuals in these housing units, all of that together is what's going to start to show success specifically at GRVC. We know that there are increases right now. Those increases are expected. It's a very, very challenging adult population, but we are managing it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Commissioner. Perhaps if I could ask if you could provide the board with monthly data on balancing, you use the term balancing, and I believe you collect data in terms of the balancing of units. Maybe you could provide us with island-wide data on what units are balanced each month.
So what we can do is I'm open to having a discussion with the BOC's team to see what's appropriate to provide as far as balancing to better answer your question. So yeah, further discussions on that I'm open to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Now, the next topic is the staff absenteeism and staff discipline. Our next topic of discussion will be the discipline. The lack of staffing is due to absenteeism has been at the heart of many issues facing the department. Appropriately disciplining staff who abuse sick leave or other leave policies is a critical deterrence tool. Commissioner, you may proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. It's critical that we give our staff the tools to perform their jobs. And it's equally critical that we act when our staff do not perform their jobs up to our standards. The department is increasing staff accountability, and when necessary, and I don't take any pride in this, when we have to suspend or terminate a staff member, this administration has shown its willingness to do that. As it relates to sick leave, as of November 12th, our daily average sick rate, it was 11.8%, which is down from when I came here in January. At that time, it was about 26.1%. This number continues to decrease over time. Also, the daily average of the medically monitored restrictive duty staff percentage was 8.9% in January, and that number has decreased to 6.9% on November 12th. The MMR and those out sick also do have a mix of individuals that are out for work-related injuries. I, as commissioner, have reviewed and issued final determination in 2,208 disciplinary cases. That's the most by, I think, any commissioner, not only in DOC, but probably the most disciplinary cases cleared of any commissioner in New York City's history, regardless of the department. As you know, when I came in on January 1st, we had about a 3,700 disciplinary case backlog that went all the way back to 2017. These issues were left unaddressed. And I will say that this department was not in compliance with one of the consent judgment provisions regarding discipline. And we finally moved into partial compliance as a designation as we stabilize, making sure that we have a timely and meaningful disciplinary process. So when it comes to terminations, this administration, unfortunately, has had to terminate approximately 180 staff members. Again, it gives me no pride to have to say that, but we've identified individuals that we felt just could not be part of our team. And that number of individuals that had to be terminated and or forcibly separated eclipses any DOC commissioner in the last 20 years. We've also, under advisement, looking at the administrative code, we've had to separate 30 members of the service, and this included in that 180, that were AWOL from service for 5 days or more. The administrative code gives me the authority to do that as commissioner, and we've exercised the ability to do that. I will point out that the federal monitor pointed out this administrative code provision powers, and it was never utilized before. Once that was identified by my legal team, and I was briefed by the federal monitor of the existence of the administrative code, we took action and unfortunately had to separate 30 individuals. Our trials division is formed up of a dedicated team to exclusively process disciplinary cases. They have had a number of vacancies that we have been able to fill out. as well. So we've added more lawyers to deal with the volume of work that's coming in. But it's not just about discipline, right? We're the same way we're not going to punish our way into a just, humane jail system. We're not going to discipline our way into having our officers perform at a high level. So one of the things that this administration recommended to the federal monitor, and in partnership with the federal monitor, as many of the legacy members know on the board, we had EISS, which was put in place so that if a member of the service was disciplined for using use of force and they have been on some probationary status, this team would provide that member support to make sure that they could perform at the level expected and address challenges that may come up. What we've actually done is we've expanded that, right? Because use of force, those issues happen because there's a lot of other systemic failures that are not being addressed. So what we've asked for our EISS team to do, and what they're putting together now, is the ability to monitor and support all members that have accepted limited probation or full probation as part of their disciplinary process, right? Whether that's issues related to sick leave abuse or what have you. In addition to that, supervisors that are on probation will also be tracked and supported by EISS so that there's a different support system to go through as you're going through the evolution of becoming a journey person supervisor, as well as if you're having a challenge within your facility, you have someone to go to in addition to going to your union representative, if you so choose to want to do that, as an outlet to get support so that your work performance can improve. We have to have the ability to enhance our staff's ability to perform this very, very challenging work that has not existed really for a long time, and where our staff is the one that's going to lead us out of this challenge. I'll stop there in case members have questions.
I have a question, Commissioner, and thank you for that. It is encouraging to hear that the numbers are heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear you speak a little bit to a related challenge of the deployment of staff and how you are tracking and responding to the incidents of unstaffed units, particularly unstaffed B posts.
Sure. So thank you for your question. We have significantly reduced unstaffed posts to where they were sort of this time last year, or at the height of when I started here, where I think the number was in excess of slightly over 100 B post floor officer positions were unstaffed. We do start out on average about the beginning of a day with maybe 20 floor posts that don't have staff, but we begin to redeploy staff from other areas to make sure that those floor officer posts are staffed. And it really is talking about a couple of areas. One is workforce optimization. So our OMAP unit and this department hired industrial engineers to address the issue of workforce optimization to make sure that we are deploying and using our workforce appropriately. This was a sticking point within the action plan when the monitor had recommended and required of us to designate a staffing manager. What we did was we actually designated that the person that would be responsible to do that would be our Deputy Commissioner of Administration. So he's working with looking at scheduling, deployment, but also critical to this is, as you all know that have been doing this work a long time, the Department of Corrections has been a paper-based system for many, many decades. And there's no reason for it to be that way. So we embarked on two things. One is the procurement of scheduling platform so that we can digitally schedule our staff members when they're going to be at work. But it's not only scheduling what post and what assignment that they may get, it's scheduling their in-service training, scheduling when they have to go to deal with health management division and sick call to manage those schedules. If they have to go to court. That platform is going to take some time to take off the ground. We just recently entered in procurement with a vendor, and we're going through the process of how do we design a scheduling program to be able to make sure that we're optimizing deploying staff and aligning schedules to that. But instead of waiting for that to happen, what we did was we looked at other partner agencies to see what they were doing to sort of deal with the accountability of where staff is deployed. And what we did was we replicated scanning capability that was used by the NYPD, largely when individuals in the PD go out to training or they go out to deploy to a detail within the community like a parade. So what we did was we replicated that for us. And what that allowed us to do is, and we did this at RNDC because we were piloting so many things at RNDC, it allows for staff to come in, they scan in that they're in the facility, and then they scan in to the priority post where they're at, which is our B post and A post. What we've seen in this pilot is it allows for the tour commander to have real-time awareness of not only where individuals are, but why has somebody not scanned in to a particular post? Could it be that the officer went there and didn't scan in, or is the post unmanned? The other thing it tells you is who was there prior to the officer that was there. So we've seen a lot of good sort of information that's been a real tool for the tour commanders at RNDC. And our IT department is now working internally after replicating the ability to do this with NYPD, as well as assistance from the Office of Information Technology for the city, of deploying it throughout all of the other facilities. So we're working on being able to deploy that technology and not just waiting for scheduling to happen. The other thing that it's important is these are huge facilities, and what they need is middle management leadership. And as you may know, for decades, our deputy wardens, which play a very, very critical role in the management and leading of our facilities, typically were scheduled Monday through Friday from 7 to 3. Now, many of them work a significant amount of overtime, where they work 3 to 11s. There may be an incident, and they come in on their days off. But just as important it is for our officers to have a work-life balance and not get burned out, we don't want the deputy wardens burned out either. So under the direction of the Senior Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Senior Deputy Commissioner Dempsey, as well as our Deputy Commissioner of Administration, Ron Edwards, they're working to put out a new schedule that would allow for deputy warden rank leadership to be available 7 days a week, 24/7. So we're working on that now and deploying that so that we have the strong leadership that's necessary to not only deal with critical incidents as they come up, other incidents as they come up, and really lead our facilities 24/7.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Cohen has a question.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes.
Recently, I believe you issued a policy 4257B, which modifies the disciplinary policy. I'm trying to read it and trying to understand. Perhaps you could explain to us a couple of issues that I understood. Now, there's previously 3 command disciplines in a year led to formal discipline on the 4th, and now you've increased it to 4 command disciplines before there's a formal discipline. Previously, the commander had 3 of the warden or the deputy warden to resolve the command discipline. Now the commander has 30 days to file the CD and another 30 days to resolve it unless there's an appeal. Does that dilute the effect of a CD? Maybe you could just describe the intention of this new policy.
Absolutely. So the federal monitor had recommended years ago that we reevaluate our command discipline policy. I wanted some time to evaluate this and not just sort of do it right out the gate in January. What I started to see as I was signing off on literally thousands of disciplinary cases, that many of the cases really should have been handled at the facility level. And what we were doing is we were entering into negotiated plea agreements with these individuals for anywhere from days of up to 2 days to 10 days. So what we've done is in our original command discipline process, an individual could lose up to 5 days, depending on the infraction that we're talking about. And what we did is we've increased that to 10 days so that there's a larger catchment of discipline that the facilities can address and not feel that all of these issues should be handled as what I would say is a more formal disciplinary process through the oath process so that we don't end up with sort of a backlog of disciplinary cases again. So what you saw was, and I think the best way to describe this is, we need to give direction to leadership. So there was a point in time where just giving out command discipline thought that that was going to address an issue. But you give out command disciplines and you don't engage with the staff, and then you take so long to address those issues, the command disciplines cannot even be adjudicated. And then we went from that historically to now saying, well, let's just have the trials division and investigations division deal with all of this sort of facility level deficiencies, and the buck was passed to them. And I think the culmination of all of that is what led us to an almost 4,000 disciplinary case backlog that was not only overwhelming for the department, but was overwhelming for OAT and also overwhelming for the union that has attorneys that have to be part of this process to discipline officers. So what we wanted to do was allow for the command discipline process at the facility level for those leaders to be engaged with that process, engage with staff members who we're trying to take corrective action for, and if need be, if the deficiency requires that the individual get more than 5 days to deal with an issue, that issue can be dealt with at the facility level. And because it's a command discipline, at some point, it can come off the employee's record. So it's really about having a robust disciplinary process, while at the same time making sure that we're not unnecessarily having people just file charges against staff members and having it handled by our oath partners.
So you anticipate that the number of cases that are open will be decreasing or increasing with this new policy?
My hope is that oath cases would naturally decrease. And in addition to that, that there'll be more impactful engagement between senior supervisors, our middle management supervisors that are adjudicating these command disciplines, engaging with the workforce so that we're getting improved work performance.
I hope that's right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Commissioner, it seems that you're really kind of moving the center and the power to supervision and to management directly of staff. How are you capacitating the middle managers to be able to do what you're talking about, being able to provide feedback that could be actionable to improve your practice?
So there's a number of ways. One is we want to make sure that we have enough assistant deputy wardens. We have a class that's in right now. I believe it's about 14 or 15 pre-promotionals that are going through training. I myself participate in that training with those assistant deputy wardens so they understand my expectations as a commissioner. I'll be teaching classes on leadership as well as strategy. We have to teach our supervisors to do this. They don't just naturally become great at supervising. So we have to have investment in the workforce to be able to do this, as well as hold them accountable. We're doing the same investment with our deputy wardens as well. As you know, we've brought in 6 very seasoned correctional management professionals, which have hundreds of years of experience outside of New York City's jail system, starting with our senior deputy commissioner who came from Los Angeles. We have 3 deputy commissioners, 2 that came from the New York State dock system, 1 that came from Hudson County in New Jersey. And we have 2 associate commissioners, 1 that has experience not only in the state of Connecticut, but also in the Nassau County jail system, as well as the other associate commissioner has 3 decades of service with New York State docks. So that's part of the process, right? Infusing outside talent with leaders that have experienced these similar and alike challenges. While we are constantly in the media regarding a lot of our challenges are not unique to New York City. And I think, when you look at other similar like systems, they have similar and like challenges that we do. What is unique, though, is we have different rules of engagement in how we manage our custodial population in this state, which makes it more challenging, but I don't think that in any way will doesn't allow us to have a humane jail system.
One, I commend you for focusing on leadership and training. For the last 3 years, we have been hearing from previous commissioners about their focus on middle management and coaching and support, but it seems that it's finally happened.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
So Commissioner, this is a really positive set of changes. Seeing the decreases in the sick and the MMR is really, really promising. The electronic scheduling, the scanning system, these sound like the right changes to be making. And I'm sure that you can't wait for the day when you don't have any triples and you don't have any unstaffed posts. And to that end, I'm wondering what you're seeing in terms of those other indicators that would kind of help you see what progress you're making. For example, double shifts. What are you seeing in terms of doubles and also triple shifts that don't rise to that level of kind of technically being a triple? Oh, the ones over 3.5 hours into the third shift being counted as triples, but then what about staff who are edging up to that? And just in terms of tracking those trends and knowing, you know, when you'll get to that day where you don't have any of those triples or unstaffed posts.
Sure. So we have decreased significantly, as you know, the number of triples and as well as monitoring doubles. I mean, we want people to have a good work-life balance. So we've directed the facility wardens and acting wardens to track that. The Deputy Commissioner of Administration, as well as our Assistant Chief of Administration, Chief Rembert, are also engaging with the facilities on a daily basis because they're also managing the redeployment process to see where do we need officers. We've also reduced our TDY assignments. So we've sent a lot of officers and captains back to facilities to deal with those issues, and making sure that our area supervisors, our captains, which is the backbone of our department, are engaged with staff. You know, we are rebuilding the department. I mean, a lot of this practical management stuff did not happen for a very, very long time. So we have a young department that's resetting. And what I will say about our staff is they also want to be better. They're embracing many of these changes, the majority of them. They're coming back to work. It is tough, challenging work, but they're up for the challenges, and we're tracking that. So we're constantly working with the Office of Management Analysis and Planning as well to see what are the data points are we currently collecting. We've recently have even asked to get additional city time data to make sure so we can track, sort of do some analysis on what we're seeing from city time data. I think we just recently were given access to that, as well as doing something simple like making sure that we're using codes for when individuals do work overtime so we can identify, okay, the overtime was used for this reason, it was used for that. So we're really becoming just more sophisticated in how we do data analysis now that we have this sort of think tank operation going on within the department. And I think as we head into next year, the information that we're going to be transparent about, not only with the public, but with this board, you're going to start to see real change in just the sophistication of how we manage the jail system in the city.
And then just one follow-up question. In terms of the leadership training that you're doing for the managers, can you talk about what training they'll be getting in terms of using the data and how it would inform their performance of their roles?
Yeah. So I think what will happen is as we constantly regularly engage with supervisors on what we're seeing from a data point. So part of that engagement and mentorship is a training opportunity. But as we start to sort of really develop out all the metrics, we'll be sharing that with our wardens, working with them to teach them how to share that with their deputy wardens. This infusion of talent that we now have in the department is a game-changing moment in history for the DOC as it relates to the city of New York. So all of those things will fall into place. We are redeveloping what used to be known as our teams process to sort of just be more focused and not just talk about use of force, sanitation, not to say that those issues are not important, but really, what are you seeing in the data and why are you making this decision? And some decisions that they make are going to be correct and spot on, and some may not be. but it doesn't mean that we're going to just discipline them for that, but really show them, listen, I would have done this differently. But we need leaders that have those shared experiences to be able to share that with them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I may, Jim. Commissioner, I just wanted to ask a question regarding your recruitment strategies and any forecast that you might have, say, over the next 3 to 5 years, where you are with your frontline staffing, and how you plan to manage that.
Sure. So our department, like a number of organizations in the public and private sector, are experiencing staffing challenges as far as recruitment, and I'll say retention as well. We've had some high attrition. We currently do have an academy class. It's our third one under this administration's tenure. I think it's about 110, 115 recruits that are going to graduate in December. We have another academy class that was scheduled to be in the end of February, where our goal is hoping to put as close to 500 recruits in that class as possible. What we did was we did a lot of recruitment to get a number of individuals to register for the correctional officer exam. We've done a lot of social media engagement, advertising, a number of community events, job fair events at John Jay College and other areas. We've restarted our SEEDS program at John Jay College, which I've lectured at a couple of times already, to get people to buy into a career within corrections and what that would look like. I've done robocalls myself to remind applicants that have signed up for the exam, don't forget you actually have to take the exam. And for those that pass, we do another robocall to stay engaged. We've had to beef up our applicant investigation unit to deal with the volume of applicants trying to become correctional officers. So that's where we're at today. We plan to do more recruit and engagement for those to interest those that want to be, what we say is be part of the change you want to see in the criminal justice system, not only in this city, but in America. And we're doing strategic engagement all the time.
And just if you can add, how do you see your forecast, maybe 3 years down the road with attrition?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of attrition, and we're doing a lot of convergence work now from a human resource standpoint to sort of try to anticipate what are our attrition numbers going to be. So we do have a commitment to be able to backfill all of our vacancies. So a combination of making sure that we can fill those vacancies. We are nurturing people through the selection process, right? But we also want to make sure that we are hiring the right people to do this very difficult work. It's not just about volume of numbers. We want officers, recruits that want to become correctional officers and later become supervisors to be strategic thinkers. We're looking at how we can improve our development of those recruits while they're in the academy so that we don't have someone get through an academy and at the end do field training and realize they don't want to work in a jail. So it's a multitude of different strategies. It's hard for me. Our goal is to have 500 people in the academy. Right now, I don't know what that's going to look like in February. I'll have a better update as we get to January and February because I'll know what the pipeline is of applicants and where they stand in the process. You're welcome.
Any more questions? Thank you, Commissioner. Now, listen, my friend. Thank you. This is details regarding active programming available in the jails. We have asked the department to present details regarding active programming available in the jails. However, we understand that DC Torres is sick and unable to provide her presentation. We wish her well, and her presentation will be featured in January's board meeting. We will still ask the department about programming operations. Programming is essential to the mental and physical well-being of people in custody. It reduces idleness, which can have an impact on the level of violence and self-harm. Do any of the board members have any questions?
Uh, Acting Chair? Acting
Yes, sir.
Chair? Could you please request that Deputy Commissioner Torres include information regarding the number of people attending each of these programs that will be discussed in each facility per day or per week? We're very interested to hear what the programs are, but I'm also very interested to hear how much penetration into the life of the jails there is. Thank you.
Yes, yes, not only, uh, not only the statistics with regards to the participation in programs, how many people have attended, and also to evaluate those programs just in case their programs are not effective within our people in custody. So we will be looking more at that as well.
Thank you.
So that in regards to programs, we will also be asking them more specific questions with regards to the operation of the ministerial services and how many people are in each facility and whether they work during day, afternoon, and evening tours and where all these programs take place. We believe very much and I know that we have discussed that the more occupied the mind is, the less time they would have to hurt themselves or to commit harm to themselves. Now, one of the things that we need to do is also to look at in terms of programs is trying to develop perhaps a program together with prison health services or rather correction health services in prevention, in drug prevention. I think that it's important for people to learn the effects of drugs, particularly now that we have fentanyl that is coming into our system and it comes in and it's being used no matter where you look at so that we can train the inmate population as well as the staff populations on their effects. So we will be looking very closely to the programs, and we will be expecting, not only the report on their programs, but also the develop of future programs as well. Now, I also know that there's a young lady by the name of Lala, whose ex-husband is a professional ball player, and she volunteers in the Department of Correction. But nobody has ever heard of her going in there on her own time and presenting programs within our system. I think that we also, being that we're being critical about programs and asking for programs, we would also emphasize and push, not push, but ask the Department of Correction to advertise as much as they can about the different kinds of programs that are being held at Rikers Island, because all we hear now is the negative, but we need to also hear about the positive and share it with the community. But we would also like to be included or to be invited to the special programs at Rikers Island so that we could also be there, when these programs are being held. So that's basically our recommendation to the Department of Correction.
Chair, can the department on January also report on certificates and GEDs? I mean, we want to know about the programs, but we want to know what achievements and outcomes have been.
I truly agree with you 100%. Matter of fact, that's why I also asked when we had the Summer Youth Employment Program, what took place, what did they learn, and how and what type of recognition they received at the end of the program. So, those are some of the things that I think that we're recommending. Those are some of the programs that we're recommending. Any other board members have any
Yes,
additions?
Chair, if I may. I just was interested, and I don't know if the data is there, but if there is sort of a tracking of PICs that might have participated in program in RNDC that are now in GRVC, which has, just trying to see if there's an effectiveness of the programs, and as they went through the system, did they really gain some knowledge from a program activity?
Yeah, so we do, we're looking to do a better job of really to do program evaluation in general, right? And as we move forward with program provider contracts, making sure that there are performance metrics in those contracts to make sure that they're effective to reducing violence or whatever other outcome points are alleged to be, will happen once the program is done. To your question regarding RNDC, so RNDC has 18 to 21-year-olds. And there might be an occasion where someone turns 22. That in and of itself would not, if the person is thriving, I would not want to just put them in another facility unless there was some really cause to do so, right? And not just have it arbitrarily driven by a number. With our long lengths of stay, which we've talked about, we do unfortunately have individuals that are with us for a while, right? And they could be with us when they turn 18 and their case not might be adjudicated till they're 20. So we'd like to keep our young adults at RNDC, and we wouldn't have a situation where someone between the ages of 18 and 21, in the majority of cases, leave RNDC and go to GRVC or go to AMKC or some other facility.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's
Thank
it?
you. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Does any of the board members have any additional questions for the commissioner? Thank you, Commissioner, for your presentation. Correction Health Services and the department updates on EMTC intake processing. We have asked the Health Services and the department to present on EMTC intake processing, given the importance of moving individuals out of intake within 24 hours. I think that the commissioner alerted to that. I know that, and there were questions asked with regards to his presentation. The next thing is, we now turn to the next item on the agenda, which is the reviews. Which one is this? Commissioner, huh? Oh, but CHS is, where are they? I'm sorry, CHS? Well, let me complete the question then, okay? We have asked the Health Services and the department to present it on EMTC intake processing, given the importance of moving individuals within 24 hours to avoid overcrowding and assessing people's health needs in a prompt manner. CHS, you may proceed. Okay.
And CHS, if
Excuse
you would
me.
like to introduce yourself and your staff like DOC did in the beginning, thank you.
Okay, sorry, thanks. Patsy Yang, Senior Vice President for New York City Health and Hospitals for Correctional Health Services. I'm joined here. Dr. Bipin Subedi, he's our Chief Medical Officer. Carlos Castellanos is our Chief Operations Officer. Nancy Arias is our Chief Nursing Officer. And Jeanette Merrill and Nicole Levy are part of, they head up our communications intergovernmental. I'm not sure what else I can add to what the commissioner briefed. I can certainly answer questions. We are certainly working together with the department, both at leadership centrally and at the facility, to make sure that people are processed through the new admission process, both on the security side and the health side, properly, completely, timely, and safely. I think the work that we're doing together has resulted in some improvements in the flow and the processing. We're aware of the concerns and working together. There's still advantages to the centralized intake for minimizing unnecessary movement of certainly a virus. COVID is still with us, as now is influenza season and respiratory syncytial virus, all of which are in our population as well.
Any questions? Now, I have a questions for the Correction Health Services, and it's related to the overdoses. And I would like to know, out of how many actually have you had overdoses have you had since January to the present time?
I don't actually,
Do me a favor.
I don't know if my folks have the number off the top of, I don't have it off the top of
You
my
don't
head.
have it
We certainly post it and report
Okay.
it. It's on our
Would
website.
would you be able to provide also, give us information as to if they had overdose, they were overdosed, but what type of drug was it that they induced that created the overdose?
So we don't process for laboratory panels what has been in the substance unless it results, unfortunately, in a death. And that's the Office of Medical Examiner that would do that. The laboratory testing at this point in time is still something that's being evolved to try and capture some of the stuff that's being circulated illegally. That's a harder compound to figure out. But when we have overdoses that are successfully reversed, we do not submit for laboratory testing to see what the substance is. I'm not sure that the laboratories can actually identify the compounds either.
Now, one thing that I just wanted to bring up, and I had to make note of it, is that many years ago, we adopted a young child, and he began to live in my mother's house because of my brother. And one morning, after my mother was making the breakfast, she was asking Jose to get up to go to school, and there was no answer. And she walked into the room, and there was Jose laying on his bed, facing up, and he was dead. Now, we found out that he died of an overdose of methadone, and he used methadone. What happened was that during that time, which was heavy with coke and crack and the rest of the drugs, they were using methadone as a replacement for the other drugs. Keiki used methadone and overdosed. And he did that because he didn't know what he was taking. I'm afraid that we may get young people in our system that are completely sober or stealing a bike or whatever it is and didn't have the money for bail and end up in our system, and then there he dies of an overdose because he started using fentanyl. And I would like to do me a favor. I would like to see if there's any possibility that Correction Health Services can get together with the Department of Correction and develop some type of prevention program that could be introduced in our facilities and also to staff. And we need to do that as quickly as possible if we can, without going out and looking for consultants. Because if we have such a medical facility that is so outstanding, we should have the information that we're going to be buying for in order to bring into the department. So, I'm just requesting that maybe perhaps that you can get together with the Department of Correction, their programs people, and develop an effective program so that we can do some
Jeanette.
in-service training in our facilities.
Thank you, Chair. That's a great set of comments. Just to assure you, we have been working with the department and continue to, both in training our staff, our joint staff, in terms of awareness, working together to also educate our patients in terms of the appropriate use of methadone, which we, Correctional Health Services, actually runs the oldest and largest jail-based methadone, OTP, actually. We also work with the department to ensure that there is no diversion of methadone for people who are in our programs, and that they understand what the use is, the appropriate use is, and the dangers of illicit use. So those are excellent suggestions, and I just want to assure you that the departments are working together to do that major educational forum as well, focus. Also, Jeanette Merrill, our head of communications and intergovernmental, has some of your overdose data. Question.
Sure, yeah. So this is posted on the Correctional Health Services website. I believe your question was for 2022 data. Is that the request?
Yeah, from 20, yeah. from 20.
Sure. So I can read, these are Narcan and then suspected and confirmed overdose events. So for January, it was 19, February 18, March 14, April 16, May 21, June 14, July 27, August 19, and then September 21. And we'll be updating shortly.
And
Suspected
those numbers are suspected overdoses, suspected overdoses that were reversed. And that is with the support of the department. We were able to put Narcan in every housing area and to train people. We're actually in the process of now retraining because of the turnover in patient population, so that not only officers and not only CHS, but the patients themselves have access to this life-saving drug. And so suspected overdoses are sort of hard to pin down. They can have a number of clinical presentations. And again, we don't do testing for it, but those counts are really where a clinician or where we suspect because of the presentation that it may have been an overdose or the administration of Narcan. So those are estimates. Yeah.
Any questions?
I had a follow-up question along the same lines, both for non-fatal overdoses and also for suicide attempts. And wondering how the information is shared between CHS and DOC. I'm thinking particularly so DOC can track things like trends in certain facilities if you're seeing more overdoses or more suicide attempts in certain facilities or certain housing areas. And so what that information flow looks like, and then how each agency uses that information in order to do things like the chair was talking about with prevention.
Team can happy and the department. On an ongoing basis, at the jail level, certainly is a real-time exchange of information. People know what's going on there. There are also daily huddles on what's happening, not only on a patient level, but also on a systems or pattern level. Certainly, it is a two-way communication where we may have a concern about a patient or the department may have a concern about a patient, and we will do referrals back and forth so that either they're getting the clinical intervention that they need or security precautions as appropriate. So at a central level, we are also looking at data and together as a work group, I think, trying to figure out process-wise what can happen differently. There is also our review process when there is a significant outcome, usually a death, where we look at our own internal processes, the JAR, and we come together and look at what systemic or process or procedural issues might have surfaced from that case that can avoid a recurrence or minimize at least the likelihood of a recurrence.
Turning.
I was just wondering if that was something DOC could also speak to, how you use information you're seeing about non-fatal overdoses and suicide attempts in facilities to do prevention moving forward.
As we work with our CHS partners, that's part of what we're doing to invest in our facility leadership teams to make sure, one, that they can understand the information that's being provided for them by CHS. We're also looking at custody management and figuring out, can we make better informed custody management decisions with information that we're getting from our CHS partners as to better co-locating this individual to maybe to better deal with their medication management and all of those types of things. So we're working towards that.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Dr. Yang. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Next item. Go, go. Go. Go.
We now turn to the next item on the agenda, reviews of deaths in custody. On November 16, 2022, the board released its report and recommendations on 9 of the deaths that have occurred in custody this year. It is available on our website. Of the 9 deaths covered in this report, 3 people died by suicide, 2 confirmed and 1 suspected. 4 from acute drug intoxication, 2 confirmed and 2 suspected, and 2 from suspected natural or medical-related reasons. The Committee on In-Custody Deaths is active and has been meeting regularly and is working on a report on the remaining 6 2022 deaths. Among the recommendations, the report made 23 recommendations to DOC, CHS, and both agencies jointly, including some that have been repeatedly included in our reports, and I would just like to quickly highlight some of them. We have discussed these recommendations with the department, and CHS has included a response to our recommendations in the public version of our report. Firstly, the CHS, DOC, and BOC should hold timely death review conferences to discuss each death, and this must include the exchange of clinical information. Issues regarding confidentiality and protected health information must be addressed and resolved. Next recommendation is that given the number of drugs present in the jails, CHS and DOC should implement immediate measures to track suspected non-fatal overdoses. CHS today gave some numbers related to that. So we appreciate that CHS took our recommendation into consideration and implemented it. DOC must ensure that correctional staff timely document accurate information in logbooks and other agency databases and transition out of the practice of keeping paper logbooks. DOC must stop the flow of contraband in the jails, whether it be through male visitors or uniformed and civilian staff. One recommendation from Dr. James Austin, who is a consultant right now with the department, is to submit all staff through body scanning before entry into the jails. Another repeat recommendation is that the department must increase the deployment of suicide prevention aids across all housing areas and intake areas as required by their own policy. And as a way to encourage that, we also recommend increasing SBA wages. We do note that before the previous report was issued, the department paid SPAs $1. After our recommendation, they increased it to $1.45. So we thank the department for taking that into consideration. But we do recommend increasing the wage beyond that. With that, I would ask if any board members have any questions.
I do. Thank you. Commissioner, I would like to hear you speak to work that the department is doing around ensuring consistent rounding and with physical visual observation of persons in custody, and also follow-up in many of the fatalities investigated in our most recent report. We noted issues around the supervision and also issues with respect to concerning behavior exhibited by persons in the days or time before the fatality, and want to know how the department is working on ensuring consistency in rounding, visual observation of individuals, and follow-up as necessary.
Sure. Hello. Thank you for your question. So a number of things. One is the department has always had what's called a touring wand system. And for many years, that system was just not utilized. Now, while the touring wand doesn't speak to the quality of the tour that was conducted, it at least confirms that at least the officer where the touring wand is installed, that the tours are being done, not exactly every 30 minutes, but approximately in an every 30-minute basis. When we took over the department, this administrative ordered that be put back online. There was some adjustment time for staff to be used to utilizing the touring wand. And what we've also doing are installing downloaders at the A stations so that we can get as close to real time that those tours are being done. Randomly, a set of tours will be looked at so that we can determine the quality of that tour on any individual officer. And if we see deficiencies in that, then we address that issue with the officer. Sometimes that's engagement, sometimes it's a command discipline. Determining on what deficiency we see, that's how that may get addressed. In addition to that, we have our CAS team that's currently with our Quality Assurance Division, and they're randomly looking at different housing units throughout different facilities. And regularly, if they notice a deficiency, detainees may not be secured when they should be secured in their cells. A pantry door may be unlocked, or a person doesn't appear to be doing quality rounding. When they are rounding, that unit reaches out to the tour commander so that corrective action can be taken and area supervisors can be deployed. In addition to that, we're inspecting to make sure that area supervisors or captains are doing tours. Those tours are also evaluated. Now, obviously, when you have a critical incident, you're also examining these issues too. And during those times when those investigations are ongoing, be they by the Attorney General's office, this body, or anyone else, ourselves, we notice deficiencies, we may take action. Sometimes that action has had to be immediate termination. If the person is on probation, sometimes that's suspension pending the due process of that happening. But all of those things collectively is what's moving the department forward to enhance the quality of service that our officers are doing. In addition to that, we do have use of force reviews. In the context of those reviews by our Deputy Commissioner of Security in his office, if there are other procedural violations that are occurring that could have what I would describe as avoided a situation from getting to a point where force had to be used, then there's corrective action being taken on that front, whether it's somebody leaving a post unattended, be it for a few minutes or for a longer length of time. Other officers may be encouraging that behavior in some way. For example, maybe the floor officers goes into the A post. Those issues are being addressed as well, not only by our first line supervisors in real time, but by all of these other systems that we have in place to correct behavior. But I would say that for a long time, right, because of the pandemic, staff challenges during the pandemic, a lot of these practical best practices were just not adhered to. And we're just starting to see, and I think in our status conference, this was pointed out, as well as by our monitor, this sort of momentum of the department moving in the right direction to be the law enforcement agency that it is, to be able to perform at a high level. Yes.
I mean, having run facilities that use the one, I mean, it's a good technical solution to make sure that people do what they have to do. Can you talk a little bit more about how you are working with the leadership, the new leadership, to kind of change your attitude of, it's not unusual for me when I go to the facilities to kind of notice like a distance between significant distance between, inmates and staff. And again, you could see variability, right? You have staff that I know you have seen that are really good at engaging and moving people, young people, adults along to do what they need to do. But there's actually like a lack of a sense of kind of primary position in corrections of, eyes on, ears on supervision. And there's a lot of people who actually, you could get a feeling that they could be in their post without interaction and engaging those that they serve. I know that's a difficult thing to change in the culture that you're managing, but how are you going about that? I mean, like eyes on, ears on, supervision and engagement between inmates and those that we serve.
So in a number of ways. One is you have to be able to train people to do that, right? So you have a set of expectations and you train to those expectations. So we're enhancing the delivery of our recruit training to deal with that issue, that you're here to manage a vulnerable population. Training at the first line supervisory level, the assistant deputy warden level, and the officers and in-service training to be engaged with the population. We're talking about thousands of employees. This is going to take time, right? Some people have a natural gift at being sort of extroverted, so it's easier for them to engage, but we want to make sure that they engage in an appropriate way to ensure that there's always a level of professionalism that is there. And then there's accountability, right? There is engagement that needs to happen between first line supervisors and officers. That's happening now at a much more engaged, rapid pace than it did in the past, which is good. And captains have to be engaged with their assistant deputy wardens and all the way up through the chain of command. When I tour a facility and when the deputy commissioners tour or the senior deputy commissioner tours, we're engaging with all staff. I don't just go to a facility and only speak to the warden. I speak to the non-uniform staff, I speak to contract providers, I speak to officers, and I could assure you that officers they're very willing to air their concerns about their work-life quality, right? Which I take back and we share that with the leadership. So it's an ongoing thing that we can always improve upon. But at the core part of our business is the managing of vulnerable populations in some way towards rehabilitation.
To summarize, what you're saying is that as you are trying to move a culture that will be engaging even within officers and supervisors, that will lead to better engagement by the officers to inmates.
Absolutely. Even with our new approach to EISS, right, where those that are on probation, whether because of promotion or for some other issue outside of use of force, our staff want to be led. This is a leadership issue, right? And we're strengthening the leadership ability, not of only all of our supervisors and officers, but even in the executive team that we put together in this cabinet. We are engaged leaders at all levels of the department.
Maybe Dr. Patsy or may be best to address this question. I am more, I think, and this may be not a significant question or a trivial question. I don't know. I'm just going to learn. But with respect to the evaluation or the mental health evaluation, how is that communicated to the department? And is there various levels of urgency or risk of suicide? And then is that taken into prevention efforts?
Yeah, so I'll just speak in generalities. I would say that with the CHS team, depending on the position of the person they're dealing with in the facility, we want to be very protected of people's health information. So we don't want to just be sharing that with everybody in the facility. But for the supervision of the facilities, the leaders of the facilities, we want them to have a heightened awareness of individuals that are in our care that have a heightened sense of vulnerability. We have PACE and other mental observation units that are not only staffed by DOC employees, but are serviced clinically by the Correctional Health Services to manage that patient population. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we're futilely utilizing what resources we do have to provide for that patient population as well. So it depends on the person who they're engaging with at the facility is the best answer to that question. And as we move to enhance how we do custody management placement, I think a lot of that will begin to flush itself out.
Hi, Bipin Subedi, I'm Chief Medical Officer for CHS. So I think just to add to what the commissioner said, I think it depends on the situation, but certainly when we perform our evaluations, if there's an acute concern for safety and we believe someone either needs a suicide watch or a high level of care, we communicate that with the department through existing pathways. And then on the therapeutic housing units, we work very closely with the Department of Correction, obviously keeping protective health information in mind to ensure that they're aware of any issues or concerns we may have for individual patients. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
Dr. Cohen.
Oh, I keep forgetting that the doctor. Yes, doctor.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up with Mr. Sampson's question to Dr. Subedi as well. There have been a lot of suicides. We've had discussions collectively about it. I thought the question about the how CHS and DOC comment, our recommendation that there be clinical data shared is very important. But can you tell me how over the past several years, the volume of death, of suicide, completed suicides in the New York City Department of Correction, how have you changed your approach, CHS? Have you changed your approach to the way you did it? Do this, take this responsibility on. Is there any change in your documentation, any change in your training, any change in your protocols? Because there is a change in the epidemiology, as you noted before. I wonder if you've been able to glean ways that you could effectively change your approach.
Yes, absolutely. So there's been several interventions that we've employed. So first of all, we've really placed a focus on ensuring that we evaluate and identify individuals with mental health needs early in the course of incarceration, so right after intake. So that's very important. I think we've also looked at expanding the availability of therapeutic housing units for patients, and that's working closely with the Department of Corrections. We recognize that the jail milieu is different than it used to be. So individuals who used to be able to manage a GP may not be able to. So we've had a lower threshold for also transferring individuals to a higher level of care. And in addition, there's been a lot of education both within the service and working with the department on signs and symptoms of mental illness, when to refer to CHS for concerns over suicidality so that we can intervene quickly and follow up.
Thank you. And as a follow-up question to you and to the department, the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and the Centers for Disease Control and the federal agency have both recommended that people who use opioids have access to fentanyl test strips, that they test the drug that they're about to use before they use it, so they could know if there is fentanyl involved and understand the incredible risk that they're facing in that situation. Has the department, I would urge the Department of Corrections and urge Correctional Health Services to seriously consider making this available. The analogy for having fentanyl test strips in the jails would be when the Department and Health Services approve the use of distribution of condoms in the jail. Sex was not allowed. Condoms would facilitate sex, but yet because of the HIV epidemic, it was this new technology was provided, in baskets in the clinical areas. So I wonder if you could comment on that, if you thought about it, and if you haven't, I urge you to think about it, because it is an effective way of decreasing overdoses, saving lives.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen, for your recommendation. I'll give it some thought. I'm not prepared to talk about that right now. It is a harm reduction strategy that is something that we can consider, but not prepared to comment beyond that at this moment.
Of course, thank you.
Sure, and I'll just add for CHS, it is something that we've discussed and thought about. There's some operational challenges and logistics to think about, but we, welcome ongoing discussions with the department and can talk about that further.
Commissioner Hess, you have talked a little bit about how you go individually in addressing the needs of individuals under custody of DOC. Is any work happening to improve the environment? I mean, you mentioned the milieu, and we know that so much of the work that happens in spaces like corrections are not about individual treatment, it's about capacitating everyone that works with individuals to have the skills that they need to do better. Is anything like that happening now?
Can you say that again specifically?
Well, I mean, like, we could look at national programs, but, for example, the commissioner is spending a lot of time in developing his leadership. Is the correctional health a counterpart to help understand how to identify trauma, or even working with vicarious trauma that many of our staff, I'm sure, goes through? I've seen correctional systems turn around when they really abide by creating a different environment for everyone. And that's what I'm hearing from the commissioner. But mental health is a big part of what we did with our Rikers. So what are you guys doing besides individually treating people who need help?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, we're coordinating closely with the department, including with the programs division in the department, to ensure that there's access to services throughout the jail, not just for those who are mentally ill and those who have tried suicide or on the THUs as a preventative measure. I think, of course, trauma-informed care is the bedrock of what we do in our service. And I think that's important also for supporting our staff. So I think that's part of the educational initiatives. We have a strong support structure.
Education also happening with the Department of Corrections?
We actually have had educational services with the department too in the past. And we also have a robust supervisory structure in the jails because, obviously central mechanisms to educate are important, but it's also important, obviously, to have hands-on supervision support for individuals in the jail, including the staff members.
My question is more to how we create a different environment, which I think the commissioner is trying to do really well. I know that a few years ago, the administration was looking into implementing Target out of Connecticut, but any kind of intervention that would really help the DOC staff that is actually working with a very acute sick population that needs support.
Yeah, so again, we're on the therapeutic housing unit, so we work closely with DOC in those areas.
Beyond the therapeutic housing unit.
And I think part of the work that we're doing is working closely with the department and programs to develop other interventions in other areas too. Will do, thanks.
Any other?
I do. I have one other question. My question is about how the department and CHS have worked on processes in place for ensuring that court orders, including orders that are on the record, so that aren't necessary, that are so ordered on the record, are conveyed to all staff, both medical staff and custodial staff, so that court orders, there is compliance with court orders. As you know, in one of the cases examined in the board's most recent report, there was reportedly an order from the Supreme Court judge that Riccardo Cruciani be placed in protective custody and on suicide watch. What is the current system for ensuring consistent and comprehensive review of court orders and communication of those orders to staff both within the department and within CHS to ensure compliance?
So just, I think I want to be able to follow up with you on that very, very long question because it's part of our opportunity to enhance how we do not only our intake process, but really be able to engage with our own legal department internally to make sure that we're transferring that information to CHS, or if CHS picks it up, they transfer it to us. So I'll follow up with you on a more full-throated answer on that question.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Yes, thank you very much, Doctor.
We will now turn to the public comment section of this hearing. Today, we are going to hear from people in custody who want to participate in this meeting in their own words. We will play these statements first and then turn to regular public comment. Denise, could you please set up the recordings for us? Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. I will now play for you the three people in custody comments that we received. Here's the first of three.
Hello, my name is Kiki Lloyd. I'm calling on behalf of the woman of Rose M. Singer. There's a situation with our commissary. The officer is on vacation, Will is on vacation, and being that a lot of us women have to have our commissary pen reset, we're unable to shop. It's been 2 weeks that I'm unable to shop due to the simple fact that no other officer within this facility could reset my commissary pen. So now this is 2 weeks I'm going without commissary. It's very imperative that they get someone in the system to rectify this situation. Please, it's very imperative. I need cosmetics to maintain. It's going to be unhealthy for me to not be able to brush my teeth or wash my body because we're lack of toothbrush, we're lack of soap, we're lack of officers, we're lack of a lot of situations in this facility. We haven't even had rec for the whole 30 days that I've been here. So I am becoming sick and ill for not eating because I don't eat this food within this facility. So please, it's very imperative that someone get in contact with Rose M. Singer about this commissary situation for the women. Thank you.
Comment 2 or 3.
This is Ms. Rona Sugar Love at Rose M. Singer Center, the female facility at Rikers Island. I'm a transgender woman, and the problem right now existing here is for Captain King, who's going around telling other women that I'm a pedophile and a sex offender because in retaliations to my complaint against her, so now placing my life in danger as she do to other women and stuff when she get mad for retaliation and lie on them to have other people get on them and fight with them or get them in trouble. This is something that she never gone. It's very unhealthy, very unprofessional. It takes mental tolls on people's mind that make them go crazy because of their childhood trauma that causes us to start thinking suicidal thoughts and everything else in that nature because they have put people to start calling you pedophile and sex offender without knowing anything about you, yet listening to a security captain that goes around starting mad trouble every time somebody rise up or she get mad at them. She'll create a problem so the other people could assault them or do something bad to them or lie on them. Right now, this is something that's taking a deep mental effect on me because of my sexual abuses since childhood and everything. So this needs to be stopped. Public, should, and anyone else who cares out there, we need to fix this problem. Captain King needs to be removed from this area, from this place, period, for our mixed unprofessional misconduct. Thank you.
The caller has hung up. I'll now play the last comment.
How you doing? I'm calling because I was on suicide watch and I was forced to be taken off of suicide watch because they put me in a place where I had a smock on, a diaper, basically. I was on suicide watch per judge because the judge put me on suicide watch due to the fact that my son had passed away. went into the suicide watch thing. They put us in a place where there was a whole lot of gang activity, basically. This whole suicide watch uh, thing was because they wanted to take everybody off of suicide watch. There was a suicide watch that didn't need supposedly to be on suicide watch. And right now, since I'm off for suicide watch, I get to speak to no clinicians, tell them what is it that I'm experiencing, what is it that I'm experiencing, what is it that I'm feeling. Um, I'm on an MO unit. Yesterday there was an officer that was supposed to be here 12 hours and basically was only here 6 hours out of the 12 hours because he said that he was had other things to do, and it was, I wasn't feeling safe. I wasn't safe at all. There was only one officer in the unit. No officer on the floor. Captain Acevedo came to come do a walk on the unit. Basically, she didn't want to come on the unit because there was no B officer on the unit. And I took a walk with her. I told her that she would be all right, that I was gonna get her to take a walk with her. She trusted me for the simple reason that there was an officer that had got assaulted on my unit, and one of the guys from the unit took the spray bottle, the OC, which is the mace. They took the spray bottle from the officer, and I ended up getting the spray bottle back and giving it to the captain. So she felt that she could have trusted me to come on the unit. She came on the unit, did her walkthrough, and basically left. This place is becoming a disaster.
And that concludes the comments from people in custody. Thank you.
Thank you to all who left public comments on our dedicated lines for people in custody. We have a list of speakers who signed up to speak in person. We ask that you keep your testimony to 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, we will ask that you wrap up your testimony. Acting Chair Ramos is going to call each person's name.
Now, don't forget, don't interrupt the people that are speaking on the microphone. Yeah, all right. We'll see. We'll get to you. Okay? All right. Okay. The doctor wants him to. Oh, you're Elvin Amadoro. Oh, listen. Oh, do me a favor. You're from Spain, but you're born in Brooklyn. Okay. There's a microphone. You have 3 minutes. Okay. After 3 minutes, I'll go. It's up, and then that means that you sit down and you listen to everybody else. Okay. My man, there you go. You have the microphone. Yeah, not yet. No, not yet. There's the mic right there.
What I do?
There you go.
Hello?
There you go.
Hello.
Okay,
My name is Edwin Almodovar. I'm a retired police officer. I even went into Fed. I toured the world. My son's in the Air Force. My daughter's a New York City paramedic. And yes, I'm proud of it. I'm gay. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Okay, you see how everybody listened to you? Now you got to listen to everybody. Oh, okay. Here we go. Michelle Feldman, would you please come up?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. My name is Michelle Feldman, and I'm the Policy and Campaign Director for the Women's Community Justice Association. We represent the women and gender expansive people on Rikers Island at the Rose M. Singer Center. Our top priority is lowering the number at Rosie's. In April 2020, there were roughly 149 at Rosie's, and today there are 340. That's moving in the wrong direction. As the holidays approach, we call on the courts and policymakers to do more to safely return those at Rosie's back to their families and their communities. Our Path to Under 100 report with the Lippman Commission, released a few months ago, found that 82% of the women at Rikers receive mental health treatment compared to 49% of men, and up to 93% are domestic violence survivors. 70% of women compared to 54% of men are caregivers. East Harlem, East New York, Brownsville, and other parts of the South Bronx are the highest zip codes for admissions to Rosie's over the past 5 years. So it's targeted in very specific places. So we have 4 recommendations that would safely lower the population of women and gender expansive people to under 100. And that includes increasing investments in gender responsive community-based programs that prevent and divert women from the system, conducting holistic needs assessment for mental illness, domestic violence, and other factors that make sure they're considered at every stage of the case, and ensuring treatment, not jails, for people with mental illness. Establishing population review teams to evaluate every case at the Rose M. Singer Center for off-ramps into non-jail alternatives, and providing accessible, up-to-date information on who is at Rosie's and what their needs are, as well as establishing a citywide women's resource navigator to help get more alternatives for women. The Board of Correction has the power to call for more decarceration, and we urge you to do so. Please let more mothers, daughters, and sisters spend the holidays with their families where they belong. Thank you. And I'd like to give the rest of my time to Dr. V.
Excuse me, can I ask you to come back and repeat your recommendations and go slowly?
Sorry, I was going really fast because we only have 3 minutes.
No, well.
So I appreciate it. Increasing investments in gender responsive community-based programs that prevent and divert women from the system. So that's the front end investments in domestic violence, mental health. Conducting a holistic needs assessment of every woman and gender expansive person for mental illness, domestic violence, homelessness, and other factors, and make sure they're considered at every stage in the case, and ensuring treatment, not jails, for people. Establishing population review teams to evaluate every case at the Rose M. Singer Center and search for off-ramps, which are non-jail options for people. And then providing accessible, up-to-date information on who is at Rosie's and what their needs are. And we are introducing legislation in the City Council to do so on tomorrow, as well as establishing a citywide resource navigator for women. So those are the 4 recommendations.
Thank you. Now I'd like to go to Ms. Sabur. Anisha Sabur, did she leave? That's the young lady I was talking to before. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll give her extra time next time. Mr. Todd LaSalle?
Afternoon. I'm Tad Basu from the Bronx Defender. I'm a prisoner's right advocate. This is my second time down here. I guess I want to begin by commending y'all on how y'all conducted the meeting. I would have commended the DOC for doing so, because clearly what Rikers Island has suffered from is mental illness is real. We have to find a way not just to tolerate it, but to address it. Um, Rikers Island today remains a jail complex where overdoses and suicides are the leading cause of death, and is exacerbated by staff absenteeism. What's being debated today is the strength of nexus between drug use at Rikers Island and the mechanisms the DOC is proposing to curtail this problem. While this has been a pervasive across correctional institutions, few have struck the delicate balance of not sacrificing family ties while still ensuring safety and security through the investment in technology that prevents harmful substances from entering the facility. Being able to maintain family ties was the linchpin for me during my incarceration. Being able to maintain family ties was the linchpin. So anything that alienates people from their family is only gonna put safety and security into jeopardy. You're gonna push people into that hole where drugs and negative things are the outcome. They'll develop unhealthy coping mechanisms. For this reason, I believe any proposal to limit contact with one's loved one will only have unintended consequences and perhaps exacerbate the very problem these variances propose to solve. There are effective solutions before us that can be implemented today. For one, units at Rikers Island should be fully staffed. Two, regular and consistent wellness checks. Three, meaningful programs. Four, implement the minimum standards. You know what I mean? Five, curtail excessive lockdown. Six, purchase technology that screen the mail for substances. I mean, and lastly, I'll say this. We talked about matrix dashboards. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see 18 families will not have a loved one at Thanksgiving. This Thanksgiving is going to be my first Thanksgiving since 1996. I was able to navigate the system by maintaining family ties, developing healthy coping mechanisms. We have to find a way, programs, with all due respects, programs is a solution to bring about safety and security before individuals get to society, but while they're incarcerated. We ask men and women to do a difficult job. I mean, they're not trained in mental health.
I have to cut you.
Got you.
Thank
But
you.
programs.
Thank you. Doctor? Yes, ma'am. And you have an extra minute. No, he's been good. He's been good.
Okay. Peace and blessings, everyone. I'm Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips. I met your name. And I'm happy to speak with you all today. There's a lot of different things that go on, and unfortunately, once again, the commissioner is not here at the public comment, but I'm happy that he actually showed up today. Um, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you had a couple of calls that if the commissioner and his leadership team had stuck around, they would have been able to answer today in real time instead of maybe in January. So that's an issue that this leadership should actually take up and actually demand that everyone who's supposed to be in the meeting stay for the entire meeting. The meeting is not over. Or if anything, play the recordings from the inside at the beginning of the meeting so that people in leadership can actually answer what's going on. That's not far-fetched, and it doesn't take many degrees or who was impulsive. And the way I watch even up here get annoyed or in the annoyed, just a reflection of just a piece of what goes on behind the walls. And if we can't sit here and embrace the floor before dying, did DOC relay that to CHS? Um, it's 6 days left. Where was CHS following up on the first missed appointment or communicating with DOC? Mr. Diaz choked on an orange. Okay. Mr. Carter died less than 48 hours of coming into DOC. And all city agency and government agencies failed him because they all were aware that he had a mental health concern. But I've asked this on the record several times. Did CHS even assess him? Mary Yahuda, she died because of a simple urine test that wasn't given. DOC tried to sweep it under the rug and say that she died from a drug overdose when she first died. And so I'm going down the list this year because there's a big disconnect when we talk about, oh, we're working on that. See, discussions, coordinating, I got more time. Coordinating is actually different than implementation. And so every time DOC or CHS comes before you to answer a question, we're working on that. We're about to start working on that. I'm wrapping it up. So my thing is, I have about 9 other names out of the 18 that directly is a lack of failure between DOC and CHS communication. It's time for this board to step up. The judge gave Melina more time to change things around, but you in real time can save lives. And it is your responsibility, each and every single one of you, to do just that and hold DOC and CHS leadership accountable, because at any given day, we could have number 19 and 2022 is not over. Peace and blessings.
Thank you, Doc. Ms. Rodney Richardson?
Excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Roddy Richardson. I'm a 23-year veteran of the New York City Department of Corrections. In that time frame, I've seen the department change and decline. I will reiterate a few things that I heard from the individuals who spoke today, that changes need to be had. And one of the things is security. Dr. V said one thing, as far as the 19th person, not to minimize anybody's death. Everybody who died is important, it's a tragic. But I feel with the lack of security and the level of violence in the department that I see, that the 19th death won't be from a suicide or overdose, it'll be because of a murder, right? Just to outline a couple of situations that happened from the last meeting that I was at, where a correctional officer doing his job was stabbed in the head 19 times for only conducting a tour, trying to conduct a tour to ensure that every individual that was incarcerated was inside their cells and living and breathing. Another individual stabbed that individual in the head 15 times, as I was. On a situation just last week, a correctional officer looking to remove drugs and narcotics out of the facility came upon a facility or housing area where an incarcerated individual, once that officer found the drugs, he was struck in the face, hit his head, and was without the almost. It's a little emotional for me because I knew the individual personally, right? Where that individual could have died had it not been for the life-saving efforts of the officers around him. But trying to do everything that everybody here is trying to ask for, as far as removing drugs and ensuring everybody's safe, we can't do that as long as violence is still a problem. We still need means and measures to hold people who are violent and incarcerated, need to hold them accountable and separate them from the rest of the population, so that way we could conduct our programming and ensure that these individuals get what they need, so that way they could be productive citizens back in society. I live in the same neighborhood that they come from, right? They live around the corner from me. My children go to the same schools, right? So we still need, it's all reciprocal. We need the people in custody, we need them to be safe, but we got to be safe in order to conduct our job, so that way we keep everybody safe. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Cynthia Acevedo. Acevedo.
Hello. Thank you, board members, for holding this hearing and allowing me to testify. My name is Cynthia Acevedo. Gregory Acevedo was my little brother. He was 48 years old when he died on September 20th. Gregory loved to read and write about history. He was a hardworking young man. Gregory also spoke about the founding fathers of the United States of America. His favorite phrase from the Declaration of Independence was, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Gregory Acevedo died because of negligence at Verdant Bay, also known as the boat. While he was being detained, the Department of Corrections must become proactive when dealing with the safety of people in their custody. People in DOC custody should not be sentenced to death. Staff are negligent because there is no accountability. Mayor Adams and Commissioner Molina need to resolve the issues that are causing the deaths of people in New York City facilities. The board should present recommendations to the Department of Corrections to help facilitate reducing the jail population immediately. The mayor must invest in communities to develop services to assist people with serious mental health challenges in our communities. The board should present a plan for the mayor to transfer people in the Department of Corrections custody who have serious mental health challenges into a therapeutic setting immediately. They need treatment, not jail. Finally, the ultimate and only solution for Rikers Island and the boat is closure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Acevedo. Kamala Moore.
How you doing? I'm going to be using Matthew Romano's time.
See if you can push the mic up a little bit.
Sorry, I'm going to be using Matthew Romano's time. I don't see the time up. I'm going to be using Matthew. That's clear. Okay.
For Matthew Hermano's time, can you,
You got 247.
I'm trying to understand, how much time was that you're trying to use?
An extra 3 minutes.
Oh, someone signed up on the list.
Yes.
Would like to use time.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
To use.
Yeah.
Come on, Papa, start.
Oh, okay. So sorry about that. Good day. My name is Kamal Moore, and I'm a senior New York City correction officer. Over the past year, we've had multiple incidents of assaults on staff, including but not limited to sexual assaults on our female officers, physical assaults on our officers as a whole, SRG assaults, and gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is one of the most prevalent human rights violations in the world. There are a few things I would like to highlight. Whereas violent individuals committed assaults against officers and nothing was done. One officer was assisting in breaking up an inmate-on-inmate fight when he was pushed to the floor and fractured his leg in 5 different places. As a result of this incident, he underwent emergency surgery. Another officer was touring when he observed a violent individual attempting to assault a non-violent individual. He gave the violent individual orders to stop the assault, and without cause, he turned his aggression on my officer, striking him in the face. This vicious attack left the officer with a laceration on his lip and a broken nose. As for myself, I too am a victim. While working in a housing area, an incarcerated individual manipulated his cell door, and without warning, he charged at me, knocking me down to the floor. At this time, he grabbed my neck and began choking me. As I began to lose consciousness, my fellow officer removed the individual's arm from around my neck. I would have died if my fellow officer hadn't assisted me during this vicious assault. How long must our days consist of visits to the emergency room? Officers complete 8-hour tours, overtime, and triples in the emergency room, receiving treatment from stab wounds, broken bones, and missing teeth. What more do you need to see and hear before the BOC takes action? There's no policy that you can write that will fix broken bones, stitch open wounds, or bring someone back to life. However, some policies must be enforced to separate violent and nonviolent individuals. This will keep officers out of the emergency rooms and returning home the same way they came to work. Imagine coming to work knowing if your shift will end in the emergency. Imagine coming to work not knowing if your shift will end in the emergency room or on the operating table. God forbid, the morgue. As the oversight committee, you must keep everyone safe. Correction officers, nonviolent inmates, and civilians. Thank you. I give the rest of my time to Keisha Williams.
You don't have no time.
No? Oh,
Oh,
fine.
you went over 2 minutes. But that's all right. You go. That's all right. Get better and you should come over. Oh, no, wait. No, Matthew Romano comes first. Oh, he gave the time to you. Oh, okay. All right, stand corrected. Relax. Madeline? Oh, you're giving your son. Okay, come on up. Come on.
Good afternoon. My name is Keisha Williams, the third vice president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to provide my testimony today. For the past 2 years, my colleague, COBA's first citywide trustee, Asagi Antoine, has raised several concerns related to the safety and security of our jails. Inmate assaults, including sexual assaults on our female correction officers, continues to increase at an alarming rate. Just since January of this year, over 1,200 correction officers have been brutally assaulted by the inmates in our custody. Since January of 2021, approximately 40 female correction officers have been sexually assaulted. Since the last BOC meeting just a month ago, a correction officer was stabbed by an inmate multiple times in the back of his head. Another correction officer, while performing his duties, was beaten by an inmate, which resulted in him sustaining an orbital fracture. Another officer was punched in the face, hitting his head to the floor, resulting in several stitches to close the wound in the back of his head. 3 more female officers were sexually assaulted, private body parts violated, and several criminal acts were committed towards the civilian staff, a maintenance worker, doctor, nurse, dental assistant, mental health clinician, program counselor, and treatment aide. These incidents do not include the numerous splashing incidents of urine and feces that correction officers are subjected to on a daily basis. The lack of accountability for inmates who violate the rules and the selective activism on your part is a clear indication that the scale of justice is significantly unbalanced. There appears to be 2 different set of rules and standards for all uniformed staff working and detained inmates on Rikers Island. But the underlying reason for this is because the majority of the uniformed staff are of color and are women. You may ask, what do I mean by that? Here is an example. There were several reports generated by the BOC regarding DOC policy and several inmate-related incidents that occurred on Rikers Island. But not one report, ladies and gentlemen, on the numerous vicious and unprovoked assaults on correction officers by these inmates. Not one report expressing your concern regarding the female sexual assault victims. Not one report about the increase of slashings and stabbings and the victims subjected to permanent facial and bodily scars. So I ask this question today. Is this board really invested in making the jails on Rikers Island safer for everyone, or are simply looking out for the interests of the inmates? And I close with this. I challenge you today to commit at this meeting to producing a report that examines the inhumane working conditions and the violence we have been subjected to and provide real solutions. Will at least one of you sitting up there have the courage to make that commitment today? I'm asking you a question. Mr. Sampson, Ms. Freya, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Ms. Jacqueline, Mr. Franco, Ms. Jacqueline Sherman, Mr. Ramos, would you make that commitment today in front of everyone to give us real solutions? I thank you. And I also want to thank you, Mr. Ramos, for acknowledging our officers for saving lives, and I appreciate that, and the recruits. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Eileen Mayer?
Good afternoon. My name is Eileen Marr. I'm a civil rights union leader and from Vocal, New York, and a survivor of New York City and New York State Department of Corrections. I spent over 420 days on Rikers Island. It is very frustrating to come to these meetings and the like to say the same thing over and over again, because rather than improve, New York City continues to deteriorate on a rapid level. It has been and continues to be a human rights issue. DOC fluctuates between denying a problem at all to blaming everything on detainees and the city, as well as imaginary visits and imaginary mail. The DOC waxes poetic on the importance of people being held accountable for their negative actions. However, they demand to be allowed permission for and not be held accountable for theirs, including the trafficking in of narcotics and weapons, as well as the neglect and abuse of detainees. 18 people have been murdered this year by DOC. When will they be held accountable? The fentanyl-infested narcotics and weapons are being trafficked in by staff consistently and constantly. Stop the BS that they enter the facilities via visits and mail, such as the fantasy that Mr. Molina wound of a fentanyl-soaked sneaker that entered via a package. Just stop it. And of course, there is DOC's rabid insistence on the use of solitary confinement, despite it being illegal in New York State for close to 2 years, prohibited by the United Nations, and scientifically proven to do more harm than good. This Christmas, it will be 2 years since my best friend died as a result of the unnecessary trauma and abuse he endured in solitary for 12 out of 17 years of incarceration, which began on Rikers Island. Solitary kills, and DOC must be held accountable for their direct violation of New York state law. Every time I hear DOC whining and complaining about the halt solitary law and why it is a necessary tool, I mourn, as do thousands of others. We, the detainees, the incarcerated, the formerly incarcerated, are not monsters. Please stop allowing DOC in New York State and New York City to treat my brothers and sisters as such. Implement and provide Narcan and fentanyl test kits, for the detainees that they will not be penalized for using. Expedite the closing of Rikers, hold the officers and staff accountable, even if it means firing every last one of them, and advocate a mass release of city-sentenced, pregnant, terminally ill, and those charged with but not convicted of a nonviolent offense. Thank you.
We will now turn to the online portion of the public comment period. For those who have registered to speak via the WebEx platform, when you hear your name, please raise your hand using the hand icon below the participants list on your WebEx screen. If you don't see the participants list, click on the silhouette of a person on the menu at the bottom of your screen. Once you open the participants list, you should see the hand icon to raise your hand. When you raise your hand, we will unmute you and you will be able to turn on your video. You can then begin your public comment. We will tell you when it has been 3 minutes and we will move to the next speaker. As always, the board also welcomes written comments. You can email written comment to boc@boc.nyc.gov or mail to 2 Lafayette Street, 12th floor, room 1221, New York, New York, 10007. The first speaker is Kayla Simpson.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. So I'm Kayla Simpson. I'm at the Legal Aid Society's Prisoners' Rights Project. I'm a staff attorney. I'm also one of the counsel for plaintiff class in Nunez. And we just want to encourage every board member to look at the actual facts about safety in the jails. And just note that the fact that the federal court did not yet order that control of the jail should be taken away from the city doesn't obscure those facts. And the first fact is that we are losing people. And you can hear that in Ms. Acevedo's words. You can see it in the tears that were, I assure you, streaming down the Tavera family's face as they sat in the front row of the Nunez conference. And they are courageous in a way they should never have to be. But the other facts are, 11 months into this administration, the use of force rate is extraordinary. Serious uses of force are higher, and yet suspensions for use of force are lower. And the agency is moving more disciplinary responsibility to the facility level. The commissioner is quite right. Of course, it is important to have competent supervisors engaging with staff who commit misconduct. But the problem is they don't actually have those competent supervisors. So what they're doing is sending disciplinary authority to the supervisors who failed to cure the misconduct, in some cases encouraged it, at the same time as they finally, after 18 months, acknowledge that they must hire wardens from outside DOC because facility supervision is so deficient. And what happens to the discipline that gets sent to the facilities? Look at the monitor's October report. 1/3 of it disappears. And even when it doesn't disappear up front by not getting entered into the system or being dismissed, it disappears from staff records later. And that's why the union favors this kind of disciplinary restructure. But look at the other facts. The numbers about access to medical care remain atrocious. Nearly 9,500 missed appointments in September, at least several hundred of which are due to lack of escorts, administrative issues, overuse of lockdowns and alarms. Staff are still working double or triple shifts. And as the commissioner admits, violence indicators here are far out of step with other jurisdictions. In other places, what would be a 5-alarm fire happens regularly here. And we're at this place where we just have a years-long state of emergency that is treated as this regrettable status quo. And while the department claims to have made strides in getting its staff to come to work, the facts show that there are still about 20% of the workforce out every day on staff posts. We were deeply alarmed to be informed recently, as an example, in advocating for one of our clients, that DOC has pulled back from staffing the wards at Elmhurst, which is the only hospital for women who are incarcerated in the jails. And that means there's no city hospital for incarcerated women who need such care. So we implore BOC on this particular issue to work with the department and report to the public about the current state of DOC staffing at Elmhurst, for example, and the bed capacity there. So what can be done for New Yorkers in custody now who are stuck in a status quo that is harming and killing them? Well, this board can be the charter-ordained source of accountability that is critical in this moment. 2 ways. First, public reporting is more necessary now than ever. And so is establishing the rule of law by issuing notices of violation for what are clearly the many, many violations from the minimum standards that you know are occurring. Where are notices of violation about ongoing abusive lockdowns, about intake conditions, about staff off post? Tell us about missed medical appointments. Tell us about what the board staff see, because they are walking the halls more than most. And the death report is a great example of that. Very powerful, and we thank you for it. But also, please, openly support and call for decarceration. This system cannot keep people safe. And even the city cannot tell you when that will change through all of their glimmers of optimism and their promises about implementation and infusion of leadership. But what we can control as a city in this moment is getting people out of that system. Lower the population, it will make it safer for everyone, for staff and for people in custody. And the board's voice really matters in that effort. So in conclusion, I'll just say that the harm, the deaths, the family suffering, they show us this is a time for more public scrutiny, not less. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sarita Daftari.
Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Sarita Daftari. I am the co-director at Freedom Agenda and a member of the Jails Action Coalition. And I want to thank the board for issuing your most recent report on deaths in custody. I want to emphasize that these deaths are not natural, and all of these deaths occurred in a controlled environment where they should be preventable. Your report documented a disturbing disregard for human life that persists in this agency. There's been a lot of understandable focus on excessive staff absenteeism, which is of course a problem, but your report also documented many instances when staff were present, but they failed to conduct adequate rounds, failed to provide first aid, and then lied about it. Consider how families of people in DOC custody must feel knowing that this is the treatment their loved ones are subjected to. Given these realities, I urge the board to go further and issue a call to urgently reduce the jail population, as you did in March 2020. The action the board took then was important, it had an impact, and it saved lives. But since then, more than 30 people have died in the jails, essentially from neglect. It is time, in fact, it's past time, for the board to use your authority to yet again urge all stakeholders to use the full extent of their power to reduce the jail population and avoid more preventable death. In their most recent report, the Federal Monitor highlighted this need for decarceration. The Monitor wrote, the monitoring team remains disturbed and concerned about the state of the jails and continued high risk of harm to staff and incarcerated individuals as outlined throughout this report and prior Monitor's reports. Translation, no one is safe in New York City jails. The Monitor also wrote, the problems are so deeply entrenched and complicated that no single person, power, or authority will be able to fix them on the rapid schedule that the gravity of the problems demand. Translation, New York City jails will continue to be unsafe for the foreseeable future. Lastly, the Monitor wrote, the monitoring team suggests that the court urge the various stakeholders to work together to address the long delays in case processing times described in this report in order to reduce the length of stay and to maximize the use of jail diversion options. The monitoring team believes it is imperative for these stakeholders to collaborate to quickly and creatively find ways to process cases more expeditiously. As noted in the introduction to this report, the problem of case processing delay is complicated and involves multiple system actors. However, this same group of stakeholders collaborated effectively at the onset of COVID-19 to significantly reduce the jail's population. So such actions are clearly possible. A comparable level of haste is required to limit exposure to and relieve pressure on the jails. I will add to what the Monitor said that part of what mattered in the onset of COVID-19 was the action that the board took, and I urge you to issue that call again. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more online speaker, then one more in-person speaker. Kelly Grace Price.
Ms. Price, if you can go ahead and turn your camera on and unmute yourself, please. Ms. Price, are you there?
Hi, good afternoon. It's Grace from Close Rosie's. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I have very bad internet. I'll just say, I'll turn in my written comments, which are specifically about the DOC output of PREA reports and how late they are and how they're not sufficient. But I want to add in my oral comments today that I really appreciate that the board pushed back on the variances that were introduced. I really want to highlight that whatever happened in the background, I know something with the board is responsible for those variances not being introduced today. And I'd like the board to know that people are watching when you have the temerity to come forward and to speak. And unfortunately, during today's meeting, we didn't see a lot of it. We really would like to have pushback from the board when the DOC says now for the third time that Deputy Commissioner Torres cannot be present to review programming. Programming is one of the 5 prongs of the violence cure plan. Why don't we have any information about it? It's ridiculous. There's zero pushback on what's happening with programming. I do not believe that what is happening in the jails is moving forward at all. And I don't believe the spin. I do believe Commissioner Molina's earnesty, but I just want to point out, for instance, that the reporting, the PREA reporting, is due within 90 days of July 1st. So the department had plenty of time to get their latest city council PREA report in, the sexual abuse, report in. They had until September 28th to do it, but they couldn't even make that simple deadline. A lot of advocates are really losing faith, Commissioner. Please listen to what we're saying. Please respond to accurate reporting requests. And I'd love it if the board could stay on top of that.
Thank you. Rachel Schneiderman.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Schneiderman, and I'm a corrections specialist at New York County Defender Services. As a corrections specialist, it's my job to communicate with and advocate for those of our clients that are incarcerated in the city's jails. We want to thank the board for their most recent report on the deaths in custody between May and August of this year. While the reporting highlights the department and CHS's failures that led to past deaths, it is also a representation of the present circumstances on Rikers Island and accurately captures what many of our clients continue to experience right now. At NYCDS, our clients routinely report horrific situations comparable to those that killed Deshaun Carter, Mary Yehuda, Emmanuel Sullivan, Antonio Bradley, Anibal Carrasquillo, Albert Dry, Elijah Muhammad, Michael Lopez, and Ricardo Cruciani. Nowhere in the jails are these emergencies more apparent than in EMTC, the Rikers Island Intake Facility. Although our clients are only supposed to be in EMTC for 14 days in order to complete their COVID quarantine, they often spend weeks, if not months, in intake as CHS fails to provide consistent COVID testing or medical isolation. Instead, they opt to house all potentially COVID-positive detainees together in one house, restarting their quarantine every time someone new tests positive. The result is unnecessarily long stays at EMTC. Since the beginning of November alone, the correction specialist team has been alerted to several medical or mental health emergencies happening at EMTC that bear a chilling resemblance to what was outlined in the board's recent report. I would like to share some of those with you now. On November 1st, I received a message that read, "My client just called me and said he was attacked, stabbed, and threatened." Later that same day, "My client just contacted me from EMTC. I met with him Monday and he was recovering from a slashing. Yesterday, he was violently assaulted. He saw a doctor who recommended an urgent care referral, but that was not followed." The following week, on November 7th, we heard, "My client was attacked in EMTC yesterday. He reported he was jumped by 20 people. Today, he was limping, had a visible bruise on his forehead, and had a possible broken wrist and hand." Later that week, November 10th, "My client was stabbed in the back and requires immediate medical attention. This is a serious and potentially life-threatening injury, and he has not received medical attention." November 14th, "Client reports he's at EMTC and sleeping on a floor. He reports he's suicidal. Can he please be put on suicide watch? He also needs meds for epileptic seizures and psych meds, but has not gotten either." From our vantage point, EMTC is a free-for-all where minimum standards are non-existent and inhumane treatment is the norm. Each time one of our clients goes into custody, we hold our breath for weeks, hoping they survive the Rikers intake process, which often includes being subjected to outright violence and sheer medical negligence. It is clear that both CHS and DOC have a lot of work to do in order to prevent further completely avoidable deaths, and we ask that the board continuously update the public on the progress both DOC and CHS have made on the recommendations outlined in the death report. Also, to Jackie's earlier question about court orders, and compliance with those, they are not being complied to. When the court orders PC or suicide watch, I am often the person in our office who makes sure that that is actually complied to in DOC. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. All right, thank you to everyone who attended and participated in today's meeting. There will be no public meeting in December. We are currently finalizing dates for all 2023 public meetings and will be informing the public in the coming weeks. We will provide meeting details on our website, and we will send an email to interested parties. I would like to wish everyone the best for the Thanksgiving holiday. Happy holidays and a safe New Year. Without hearing any objections, the meeting is now adjourned. Do I have a second? Thank you. Mr. Adol, yo quiero hablar con